Tisk tisk, there are ninjas. Shumo can't see clearly what the Marvel comic universe is, and the movie universe looks much more normal. Suddenly remembered if it would be interesting to summon the characters from Naruto. Who are you? Damon quickly stepped back and stood with Mindy. When he woke up, he immediately realized that he wanted to protect his daughter, even though the daughter was trained very powerfully by him. There were more than a dozen Donggying ninjas around. Even though they were not far apart, Damon could still feel the awe-inspiring killing intent on these ninjas, each of which was a terrifying top killer. The scene fell into silence. Frank didn't say a word. He took a sigh of relief at the moment the ninja in red appeared. His fortune was saved. Even if the gang members can't kill Shumo, it's okay to take him away without help. As long as he does not die for a day, he will avenge today's revenge. First of all, some comic company will go bankrupt. Frank's eyes showed fierce light, and he stared at Shumo. These ninjas were silent as if they hadn't heard the question of damning, as if a person squinted and stared ahead, and in their eyes there were only dead people. Mindy and Damon became nervous for a while, and their strong aura made them afraid to move. They had to make a comprehensive plan. Do you think you can escape? Shumo looked at Frank, who was fiercely facing each other, and knew what he was thinking about. Could these ninjas still be able to perform ninjutsu? Hey, I admit that you are very strong. If you want to kill me, it's best to think clearly before doing it. We can shake hands and make peace. You are dead. Shumo stunned back when he heard the words. He is not stupid. This kind of underworld figure can cheat himself if he speaks. Frank smiled grimly and said coldly, kill him. As soon as the voice fell, Shumo heard a few piercing noises in his ears, and the bright samurai sword suddenly appeared out of thin air from his side. The cold edge was unexpected. Shumo didn't see it clearly, but he was not afraid, just wondering how tough LV2 could reach. Clang. The crisp sound of metal collision sounded, hovering in everyone's ears. The katana slashed Shumo's head and wanted to cut it in half, but he didn't want the veins of his arm to burst and he couldn't move it deeply. Ordinary people will be sluggish just like the killer guy and before, but the ninja with hands on hands is not surprised. There are only 5 leaders in the Shohahui, known as the 5 Fingers. They have strong melee combat capabilities. The ninjas under it have encountered opponents such as superpower or mutants in their missions. I'm used to seeing too much. Since my skin is thick, I will try to find out where the limit is. A few red afterimages suddenly appeared after passing by. The exposed eyes exuded cold eyes, and the sickle was thrown out to Shumo's neck. Several shurikens were thrown, and the poison on them could penetrate and cause death on the spot with just a little wound. Clang clang. It was blocked again. The blade of the sickle was rolled up directly, and the shuriken was the broken tip. Ninjas don't know how to do ninjutsu. I really feel ashamed of this title. Shumo Bolan watched the ninjas show their magical powers without surprise, and there was nothing in his memory at all. He shook his head in disappointment. Ninjutsu. What the hell? The headed ninja in red felt that his self-esteem had been humiliated, and dancing with weapons was even more majestic, but he was humiliated. Shumo was still unscathed. Yun Tangfang looked at them lightly as if they were watching a circus as a beaming joker. Frank's face changed drastically. Now the situation is too clear. The hand-to-hand club is not Shumo's opponent at all, and he shouted timidly, "Take me out of here." When the ninja who seemed to be the captain heard this, his eyes were erratic and could only retreat angrily to Frank. Want to escape? Want to escape? Shumo knows that his strength is too rough. The merits of these ninjas are their fine fighting skills and weird physical skills. If Frank is taken away, it will be even more difficult to find him next time. Next moment. Boom. Shumo slammed a punch out of thin air, and the airwave on the fist evacuated everything around him. The sonic boom in the air exploded like thunder, and it poured forward with lightning speed. The ninja intended to directly take Frank to escape into the dark with his ghostly physical skills, but he didn't expect the shocking current of the waves to rush toward his face. Buzzing. The fierce airflow not only made him unable to leave, but also made him slam into the wall like a kite with a missing string. The crashing rubble slid down and fell on the 2 Franks. At this time, they were in a panic, with dense scratches all over the body. Shumo walked to the gravel pile in a leisurely footstep, and several white light balls sprang out like lightning in the sound of, and hit the other ninjas in his hand. Boom. Under the burst of bright red rain, his face was frosty, watching them like Shura. If a ninja wants to run, Shumo really can't catch up with his current ability, and he doesn't have the speed and agility skills, but these are dead men who do not achieve their goals in order to complete tasks. Their appearance is to protect Frank, indicating that there will never be abandonment, and Frank's reaction is not as good as the Jonin, and he is half a beat slow. Shumo took advantage of this half-time and hit the 2 men in one fell swoop, completing the destruction of the red ninja. Well, I didn't expect that I had been planted in the hands of a kid for so many years. If you want to kill, kill it. Frank's strong body smiled bitterly, in a posture of being slaughtered. Now I have changed my mind again. Shumo sneered at this and patted the clothes on his body. The ninja's attack is still useful. There are holes everywhere. I really want to ask where the manufacturer of Hulk underwear is, and whether to order a set of them. Don't kill me. Frank was overjoyed and secretly said, he was able to escape from the dead, but the ninja lying on the side was anxious and terrifying. Is this a joke? This is the one thing he wanted to ask in his consciousness. Damon and Mindy's faces looked very ugly, but in the next second, the two of them were stunned, and then they beamed. You two. Let's do it, I'll go first. Shumo turned around and walked to the elevator and raised it. At this time, the police sirens sounded near the building. No, it's impossible. Frank's twists and turns from death to alive and falling from heaven to hell broke the underworld boss. Frank, remember that I killed you myself. Damon held his gun against his forehead, showing a cruel smile, and his speech was gentle and biting. Boom. At the same time, Mindy killed the ninja who was still beside her. Come on, Mindy. Well, big old man, where are you going now? After Damon got what he wanted, his handblade enemy was so excited that he fell into confusion. What is the future path? After a moment of silence, he firmly said, you go to school. Ah. As the setting sun sets, there are secrets hidden in the red sky. 8 police cars were parked around the Frank building, and the cordon was pulled up. Chief George got out of the car. He led the team and looked up at the building. Smoke billowed from above, and the situation was worse than he thought. To be reasonable, this is the site of Frank's drug lord, unless he wants to capture Frank or he doesn't want to step into this place. It's a disgusting place of depravity. But today is different. The residents in this area immediately called the police after hearing the bursts of gunfire. George thought it was a gang rage, so he didn't rush to take all the combat forces in the bureau to get a fisherman's profit, but he didn't expect to rush into the air. Several stalls of blood passing by on the ground make people bleed. When I walked into the building, I saw a shocking bloody hell, none of which were live mouths, gunshot wounds, cuts, and stumps found everywhere on the 4th floor. It appears to be caused by a high-energy explosive bomb, but no shrapnel was found at the scene. All the way up to the top floor, the fighting took place between floors, but there was no fierce exchange of fire on the stairs. At the same time, it can be seen that after the battle, the upper middle class ran to the lower class to encircle and suppress them, but unfortunately they all died. In the end, Frank, the biggest leader of the gang, was lying on the ground. Those godless eyes and desperate face all revealed the great mood swings before Frank's death. Director, all the surveillance cameras are out of control and there is no image. A technician came to report. Director, look at this. George stepped forward and looked at the place where the staff pointed, cracks cracked. He wondered. This kind of crack has appeared on the 4th floor. It is the same kind. What is strange is that it does not extend around, indicating that his point of action is not on the ground. A young policeman speculated excitedly. Could it be that the air was blown out of thin air, and the wave hit the floor? This idea came to him with a flash of inspiration. As a loyal fan of Saitama, he feels that he can do it with great power. Don't treat fantasy as reality. The staff ran a pot of cold water and directly denied it, a guess of the true answer. At the same time, some of their wounds are newly added. They should be completely killed after they have killed Frank. They will not give any chance to reveal the appearance of the murderer, and the number of them is small. George walked to the side of the red ninja, frowned and thought, some are not gangsters, are they ninjas? The surname of the matter began to change. I thought it was a gang rage, but now it is revealed that the armed forces of other countries have penetrated the United States. This is not a small matter, and it will cause international disturbances. At this time, a policeman outside came in and shouted, Chief, it seems that the detective is asking to see you. George flicked his face when he heard the words and was in a terrible mood. Then they walked into a few people in black, and they walked over the surrounding scene calmly and strode quickly. The head is a taller, kind-looking middle-aged man who combs his hair meticulously at the back of his hairline. Director George, I'm an agent of the CIA's Central Intelligence Agency. Here are my credentials. The middle-aged man took out his ID and handed it over, and smiled friendly. Oh, no, I actually saw you at noon. At that time, you showed your credentials to other police chiefs. Collison from the FBI. Chief George chuckled. As soon as his voice fell, Collison didn't change his face, and the police around him put on his waist holster quietly at the same time. The agents behind Collison narrowed their eyes. George paused, waved his hand and said, whether you are the FBI or the CIA, I know that the document is true. Why? I have to accept this case again. Director George certainly knows that Collison is true, and saying this before so many people is an indication of dissatisfaction that the carnival case was taken over at noon. Tenton, the police's job these days, is done by someone. Volunteer police, a special official department, made the role of the police directly become the city management of the Celestial Dynasty. Yes, it is really helpful for you to provide us with all the information about this incident. Collison was not surprised when the lie was exposed. The fact that this kind of document was true was his confidence. George, who is just the chief, knows that the more he knows, the worse. This is a deep pool, he just responded and turned and left. Soon, the police evacuated the building instead of some powerful agents in black. Report this information to the director first. New York is really not peaceful. Collison read the police information, shook his head and smiled bitterly. I am back. Shumo returned to the house, took out the key, turned the door, looked at Giali who was eating the sea, his face turned black, staring at the little loli angrily and shouted, I'm working hard outside, you stealing food behind my back? Why did you buy 3 copies of this takeaway? Cut. I made the surveillance probe. This takeaway is a reward. Giali was eating pizza on the sofa, turned over with a look of disdain, and Byakugan muttered, Shumo, I found you are so useless. Don't tell the truth. Shumo sat depressed on the sofa and competed with Giali for takeaway. Secretly. Do you want to draw the Terminator comics? Skynet is the artificial intelligence that dominates the world and generates self-awareness, which has risen to the level of intelligent life. With this big killer, Tony's Jaw-Wiss is a scum, but I don't know how it compares to Ultron. What's more, the Terminator in the later stage of the series is really good. It is enough to be a bodyguard for ordinary people, and it can be put into the company, and it can also be mass-produced. The more Shumo thought about it, the more he felt it was okay. After eating the takeaway, he hurriedly walked into the study and began to draw the gourd. Giali changed channels, and the night news host reported. An explosion occurred in a military laboratory. Witnesses said that a huge green monster was seen in the billowing smoke. In the early morning, the warm sun fell on the ground, and Edward got up from the mat early. He knew that today was the release date of the second issue of Juvenile Jump. He hurriedly baked the bread and took milk and ran to the nearest bookstore. When he came, he was startled by the sight in front of him. How did the boss open the door? Hurry up. Give me a Juvenile Jump. I have a copy too. I want 3 copies. Crowded people piled up in front of the bookstore, making noise and noise, but they were all clamoring to jump. It's a fascinating age. Edward watched this scene, his eyes could not help being flushed. He was a comic critic and a reader. In the past, he was extremely disappointed in every evaluation. He hopes that there will be real cartoonists to save this sick cartoon industry, and now it has finally appeared. The store manager is an old acquaintance before, and he received a lot of money as early as last night. Last week, the comic magazine company sold 190,000 copies, and fools didn't buy too much. Soon all of these he moved out were sold out, and the popularity was unprecedented since he opened the store. Scattered people came to ask questions constantly, all came to buy Jump, but they could only show disappointed expressions and left empty-handed. Edward didn't worry that it was really out of stock. In fact, he greeted the store manager yesterday and kept a copy. When he walked a few steps with a smile, there was a scream of exclamation from the stream of people who hadn't dispersed. Fact. Saitama is so strong? Is this a new character? Didn't you find out? The price is different, but it's much thicker than before. All the voices tickled in Edward's heart. Oh shit, damn spoiler party, can't you honestly do it? Hurriedly stepped forward and shouted at the store manager who was calling to request additional goods, old man. The store manager didn't have time to look after him, so he pointed to the drawer and started talking for himself. Edward had to get into the inner room and pull out the comic magazine from it. I held it in my hand like a treasure and took a look at it. The high-level painter in the past is different from the first phase. The front is still Saitama, but new scenes appear on the left and right sides. On one side, a person who seemed to be skinless and exploding with blood vessels was lying on the wall and looking down. It was clear that the people below were very small. Giant? Or a dwarf? On the other side, it was relatively simple. A weak and casual young man sat in a chair in the vast expanse of whiteness. Behind it was a woman with long purple hair, an elegant surname, and a charming figure, bowed her head and said something. Compared with other readers with little reading experience, they will guess whether they are new characters, and Edward can see at first glance that there is no relationship between the 3. In other words, Shonen Jump began publishing 2 new comics in this issue. This is also normal. It is impossible for a comic magazine to serialize only 1 comic. Edward couldn't wait to put down the money and rushed back. On the way, many young people were reading comics. He didn't want to look through the street like this, hurried back home, turned on the computer, clicked on Twitter, and prepared to comment immediately after reading, made a delicious cup of coffee, settled down, and then opened the page. One page. Following the previous story of the battle between the Underworld King and Saitama, then it was a dream. Edward's expression froze. The first page is so simple and clear that so many long-awaited fighting ideas have been crushed, but then think about it, so that the plot is in line with Saitama. One Punch Man. The name of the comic says it all. It's still the same as the previous episode with 4 episodes, the appearance of Janos, the appearance of some weird people undoubtedly firm the style of the beginning. Cool and lazy. Seeing this, Edward was relieved. Many new comics are beginning with God, ending with horses, and ending with dogs. As long as the follow-up plot is maintained in accordance with the rhythm of these 8 words, this year's Dark Horse champion is that Saitama did not run. Immediately after turning over One Punch, the next page is the title page of the new comic. The title page is the cover of the comic. As before, it is enlarged to make it clearer. The bright red comic title listed on the side, Attacking Giant. It is too late to think that Edward is completely obsessed with the new comics that follow, and the stories and settings are breathtaking. The Attacking Giant is telling. There are countless huge giants suddenly appearing in the world, and the lives of ordinary humans are threatened like never before. In order to protect their own safety, the last humans built 3 high walls, Maria, Ruth, and Hina. Mankind has ushered in a century of peace, but it has also allowed itself to become a bird in a cage, humiliatingly losing its freedom. Suddenly one day, the supergiant and the giant of armor smashed through the outermost layer of Maria, awakening the long dream that humans seem to never awaken. In this incident, Alan Yeager, a teenager who did not want to curl up inside the wall, witnessed his mother being killed, and he joined the investigation corps. With unspeakable hatred and hatred for giants, he vowed to kill all giants. Edward was surprised to find that although only 5 episodes were serialized, each of these episodes weighed so much more than the previous One Punch. In Chapter 5, 5 years later, the supergiant struck again and broke the second wall. Countless giants once again ravaged the town, and the investigative corps fought with it. Then the protagonist was eaten to save people. Edward was stunned. How did this comic kill the protagonist at the end? What the hell is this drawing? Isn't Alan the protagonist? Wait. Maybe what superpower we'll get in the next episode, right? But this is not a superhero theme. Edward can't guess the subsequent development of the plot, which has nothing to do with the hero. Thinking of this, Edward's scalp went numb, and he suddenly realized that he was addicted to non-hero subjects. The non-hero subject matter has been a desert since ancient times. Whoever paints will die. There were once big names who vowed to expand. Since the comic critics who are well known as poisonous mouths are deeply attracted, can other readers not buy it? Edward even guessed that the internet must be noisy, so he held up his temper and turned to the next page, which was another new comic. Tokyo Ghoul. Looking down, Tong Kong shrank sharply, and he found that the author's name was Shumo, and quickly flipped forward. Shocked. Seriously serialized 3 books at the same time? At this time, he remembered that the boss of this publishing company seemed to be also named Shumo. The stormy sea turned up in his heart, and the facts had to convince him. The boss draws comics part-time and publishes his own book, which is so popular. Can this work? The brilliance of a new day rises from the horizon, and a faint white light rises from the horizon, standing in an old castle in the northern suburbs of New York. The green grass is like cloudy, shimmering by the small lake. Many students are playing in this flat open space. If the people of New York come in, they will definitely be frightened. A student suddenly split out of 3 identical people while playing basketball. A girl ran around looking at obstacles along the way as if there was nothing, and went straight through. There was also a young man with a tall body and a shiny medal. And many more. This is the Xavier Bandit Youth Academy, and it is also the Mutant School. Bobby, what do you think I bought? Fireman John raised the comic magazine in his hand and walked to the Iceman Bobby's side. You bought a Juvenile Jump. The bookstores around me were all sold out when I walked in the morning. Bobby was surprised when he saw the comic. When John saw this, he smiled triumphantly. I was prepared. I met a child on the way and bought it at double the price. It doesn't seem to be something to be proud of. What do you care about so much? John was a little displeased and angrily said, Don't look at it, don't look at it, I'll take it back and see for myself. Both John and Poppy are passionate teenagers, and comics were involved in spiritual entertainment, but the heroism in them made them a little offensive. The reason is simple, they are mutants. Professor Charles came to search one by one, or his parents felt that something was wrong and couldn't bear to hand it in, so they had to throw it away. In this way, most of the children in the school have been abandoned by their parents. They didn't grow up very well. At this time, watch a God-righteous man, Captain Steve, in the comics to eradicate evil and help abandon ordinary people like them. To be honest, it is very difficult to have a good mood, and at the same time I wonder if there are such people to help them, even though I know it is impossible. Saitama of One Punch Man was incredibly casual, and didn't use any moral excuses to kill the weird people. It was incomparable to the taste of both of them, and he became a fan at that time. Hey, Saitama is still so powerful. I have such a power to protect everyone. Did you not find out? There is a stronger presence in it than Saitama. Bobby was surprised, and asked quickly, who is it? He watched comics with John, why didn't he notice? John showed his eyes full of meaning, and pointed to a page. That is a mosquito. Saitama didn't kill him with a series of slaps, but instead buzzed and fled. Mosquito. Why can't Saitama hit it? With Saitama's terrifying truth, how can one fail to see the movement of a mosquito in a mere sight? Incredible. John said in a huff, how do I know? John originally wanted to make a joke, but Poppy didn't think about it more. He didn't think about it, but he left it behind. There are new comics, it doesn't seem to be a superhero subject. Soon after, Bobby and John finished the entire comic magazine. John suddenly asked inexplicably, you said Jin Mu wants to eat human flesh? Tokyo Ghoul, only 3 episodes are serialized, which is different from the start of The Attacking Giant, which is only centered on human nature, and there is no conflict. Compared with the previous 2 works, it pales in comparison, and it seems that only cannibalism is a bit attractive. I don't want to, the comics are so clear, are you stupid? After Bobby heard the words, he affirmed Kaido. Yeah, he didn't want to eat, but he ate it in the end. John's face grew darker and annoyed. Don't you think Bobby is in a similar situation to the mutant? Mutants don't eat people but are regarded as guilty, and then they are marginalized, and they finally get together with the same people to keep warm. John was sent to school, impulsively, he didn't like the peaceful atmosphere here, and he felt like a beast. He didn't like to be a mutant at first. What he needed was relatives, kind parents. He couldn't help substituting when he looked at Jinmu. Cannibalism is a last resort, and the same is true for being a mutant. This is survival. Bobby was a bit confused for a while, but he didn't expect John to have this kind of thought. To be honest, he didn't substitute it, and it seemed to make sense. At this moment, a gentle voice came from behind the 2 of them. John, do you really think so? The 2 looked back, but the redhead pushed the old man in the wheelchair slowly. John is usually careless, violent and provocative, but in front of the mutant leader, he is like a good baby. Professor, You are true, John, this cannot be denied, but we will eventually get along with humans. Professor Charles smiled faintly, glanced at the cartoon in John's hand, and paused. Can you let me have a look? John hurriedly handed it over, and under the sign of Chin, he ran away with Bobby like a frightened little rabbit. Bobby was dragged away, and said depressed, the professor doesn't feel terrible, why is he so excited? Actually, I lied to you just now. This comic was not bought twice. I snatched it from a kid, but I paid the original price. John patted fiercely and explained. John really didn't see that you would snatch children's things. I read you wrong, and the professor would not read our thinking. Bobby expressed his disdain. John is usually domineering, but he didn't expect to run outside to snatch it. Just now he said that mutants don't eat human flesh. You even said that lollipop comics? Chin watched the 2 of them gradually move away, and leaned over to see Charles flipping through the comics, and curiously said, Professor, why are you interested in comics? Comics are popular among teenagers and children, and the older they become, the more senseless they are, especially for professors who have a lot of experience. Regardless of the media reports on Shonen Jump, I mentioned it slightly. In the eyes of adults, it is just an ordinary comic magazine, and people who are not interested will never read it. Especially the social elites, the celebrities simply skipped it, let alone a leader like Charles who has dedicated himself to the mutants. I have never heard of it. Nothing, just curiosity. I can feel the thoughts mentioned in the next 2 comics by Shumo, and I kind of want to see him. If I don't understand the piano, what else can I think and philosophy when I read a cartoon? In this way, Chin, buy one for me every time a new issue is released. Okay, Professor. Chin responded while pushing the wheelchair, thinking that I would also check it out. God. Isn't this kind of thinking the current situation in the United States? After reading it, Edward was full of the plot inside, and he deeply felt the author's intention. Compared to Bobby John's superficial reading, Charles, who has a lot of experience, and a comic critic who has looked at thousands of comics. The directionality of the 2 comics is very obvious. Edward crackled on the keyboard. At this time, Twitter was already arguing and fans received the message. The second issue of Youth Jump does not say much, it is far beyond my expectations, Do you understand the thoughts in it? Let me come one by one. The first manga overturned the traditional concept of heroism and created a new definition of heroes. The settings contained in it were satires of common superhero comics. The second book, Attack on Titan, the story of the story is very straightforward. The origin of the giant, the construction of the city wall, etc. are directly set as suspense. In the third, Tokyo Ghoul, the protagonist is just an ordinary person in life, who has been miserably suffered from man-made disasters, wandering on, eating and not eating, aroused the inner blood of most teenagers in the sympathy and compassion for the protagonist. Among them, the concept of Kazuko was also mentioned in the second chapter, and it shifted to the hot-blooded battle, reaching the level of Superman's compelling standard. From a few words, one can discover the reflections on humans and aliens revealed in the comics, that is, when a creature can no longer be reduced to a pure species, what should he do? Both new comics reveal one direction, that is, alien. When fans saw a lot of water here, they all posted comments below, which completely became a screen of water flow. Why didn't I see anything? What did Edward say? Alien, no nonsense. I am not blind. What the hell? Why can Edward see so much from the Ghoul? How'd I feel that Ghoul starts so well? Upstairs, you are not alone. The giant attacking is much more beautiful than the Ghoul. Lord Kakuzu is dying. What a man cannibalism. So many people early in the morning, FAK, I haven't bought it yet. Edward makes a lot of sense. Whatever you don't understand is a brain dead. Hehe, I found a fan. The two comics are so awkward. The protagonist is a spicy chicken, or Saitama is handsome. Suddenly, there were disturbances, and the heat soared again, making it into the top 10. Edward smiled when he saw it, only the heat went up. His reanalysis will usher in a big explosion, and this article may still be up and down by the time. When the popularity reached the top 5 on Twitter, Edward clicked the enter key on the information he had compiled and sent it out. Perhaps no one realizes the meaning of the aliens I said. As we all know, fantasy depends on reality, and so does comics. Just yesterday at the New York Carnival, Green Goblin, the super criminal, appeared in the massacre. He was an outlier. At a critical moment, the superhero Spider-Man appeared, and he is also an alien to us. Then substituting into the comics, it is not difficult to find that New Yorkers or ordinary people are not just civilians surrounded by walls. Civilians can only be slaughtered by giants, only the core can resist, and only other friendly aliens can protect us. I can boldly guess that Alan in the giant's belly is the Spider-Man on the wall. Let us talk about the third book. Alien is a cannibalism and cannibalism. Jinmuyan is a half-human and half-cannon, who is kind to people, but has to eat meat to survive. These meats are just the flesh of corpses, and the Anding district just wants peace, does not want to hurt mankind. So in reality, who partly has malicious intent toward humans, and who also has good intentions toward humans at the same time. That is, Mutant. In 1973, when the president was attacked, Magneto was the murderer, and it was the devil who prevented evil. In 1973, when the president was attacked, Magneto was the murderer, and it was the devil who prevented evil. Mutants are a large group. According to the latest research, they are actually a branch of humans. Mutants are heterogeneous, and heterogeneous are not all mutants. It is not difficult to see from this that the third comic is the progressive thought of the second comic. That is, in this extremely chaotic era, human beings need to form an institution similar to the Investigation Corps to protect us, and they need heterogeneous and peaceful coexistence that is friendly to humans. The new issue of the weekly shows that friendly mutants are important to mankind, and it is also an accusation of the Mutant Registration Act. The above is my personal guess, and does not represent the standpoint of the comics. After Edward published this long tweet, the comment area fell into an unprecedented tranquility since the beginning. Edward was originally full of letters, but saw that he didn't say a word. He felt a panic in his heart, and said in secret, is it possible that he is really a little foolish? After all, the comics didn't say a word at all. Relying on his many years of speculation and association as a comic critic, maybe he really thinks too much? In the next second, countless comments scrolled under Twitter, pouring out like a well. Zayate, it makes me horrified to hear that. Goosebumps are all up. It seems so. Is this true? Huh. Why am I so confused? Me too. My mind is a little messy, which means that the Cartoonist is an anti-registration party. Then I drew a cartoon? I want to say but I don't know what to say. Is the author witnessing the mutant's name? I was so scared that I was on the floor. Edward, do you believe in yourself? No one noticed the Spider-Man on the wall. It sounds funny. At Marvel Comics, someone has stolen the manuscript. Call the police. The fans were very excited, and their hearts throbbed through Edward's explanation. The current comics have never mirrored reality. At most, there is a similar ability, a similar name, and the drawing is the same person of the Captain of the United States. The 3 books now appearing are all related to reality. One directly breaks the inherent concept of heroes, and the other 2 go around the circle to express that it is time for human beings to reflect on their own definitions. Obviously, there was only one issue, and the general background of the world was not fully understood, so Edward lost a shocking bullet with reality. It looks nonsense, but I don't know how to refute it. At a time when opinions were divergent, Edward's next book review on Twitter came up. Marvel Comics Company Shumo. Books that have been read for 12 years are not as good as your show. The hot comments are even more explosive. Is it true? Now I have a real hammer, so I don't need to read it later. The real hammer is not to be watched yet, and there is no spoiler. It even kicked the first one down. If the previous is the shock bomb, Shumo's comment is the explosion of the nuclear bomb, and more netizens have poured in. Gwen as mutants is a big topic, then Twitter stuck. Tisk tisk, this comic critic can really make up for it. Shumo shook his head and smiled after sending the message. But it really is. Others don't know, can he as a cartoonist not know? The situation of the Ghoul and the Mutants is a bit similar. The security zone behind it was breached by the official CCG, and William Stryker's attack on the Mutant school was exactly the same. He simply thinks that the 2 comics that he saw on the internet disc in the previous world are somewhat interesting in the United States. The bloody violence among them has a big market in this, and he did not expect that it would be associated with it. Since the last big explosion, Uncle Andy has discovered that Edward, a comic critic, can play a role in fueling the flames. Shumo's comments this time are undoubtedly wave after wave. Doo-doo. Uncle Andy, are the anime production staff here? Okay, I'll go right away. Andy told him on the phone that the staff had been assembled and could start production at any time. The animation produced this time was One Punch Man. After the anime is broadcast, it will promote the comic itself. Even though it can sell hundreds of thousands of copies a week, it is just a small wave compared to the entire United States. The audience of anime is extremely wide, far more than comics. Take One Punch Man as an example. Before the anime was broadcast, most of the comic fans in the past life hadn't heard of it at all. As well as Attack on Titan and Tokyo Ghoul, the style of painting is mediocre, not outstanding. Why is it hot? Among them, the opening song accounted for a large part, and even the empty ear, playing Fat Times, had a promotion effect. Let groups of people who have never watched anime jumped into the pit willingly. Especially when Shumo was in school in his previous life, female classmates liked to watch these movies. Men and women take it all. It is a homework for many small comics. Animation is the greatest benefit of fan value. After watching anime, some of them will feed back and can't wait to read the comics, and the fan value will continue to be credited to the account. Moreover, he has some questions about the calculation of the fan value of the system. Does animation count as a published work? If so, he will make greater profits. After all, some people don't like to read comics, and they are too strenuous. They just wait for the animation to come out and watch it directly, and don't plan to watch the follow-up afterwards. Shumo was such a person in his previous life. He didn't read the comics of Giant and Ghoul at all, and he didn't plan to follow up and would not read it. Such a group accounted for the majority of comics. Shumo asked Giali to stay at home and came to Marvel Comics Company alone to have a meeting with the animation production team. Today's Marvel Comics Company completely uses the entire floor, no longer the scale of the studio. The staff has reached more than 20 people, most of which are the production staff. Shumo sat at the top of the conference room, looked at them and said, "I'm not an animation producer. I don't know how many people sitting here are talking about the level of production, but I only ask for 2 points. First, the picture should be exquisite, and there should be no collapse, which affects the perception. The second is that the plot is not procrastinated, the rhythm should not be too slow, and there should be no water plots. Gradually speed up the rhythm to keep up with the comics." A man in his 30s objected, "But this kind of production budget will be very large, and if it is too fast, I am afraid it will exceed the comics, and then there will be no way." It is the leader of the animation group who has rich production experience and has been in related industries for many years. He was dug over by a high salary. The questions asked are the key points. He deeply knows that there is a big difference between manga and anime. It does not mean that a good manga artist can produce excellent anime. Let alone the current market, the animation market in the United States is as scarce as comics. The level of production is generally average. If it is exquisite, money is like flowing water. Besides, anime has 1 episode a week, and comics also have 1 episode a week. 1 episode is not necessarily equal to 1 episode. How to make anime if you don't save 50 episodes, otherwise you will catch up soon, and you will be in trouble. You can do it with peace of mind. You don't need to worry about budgeting and making it beautifully. As for the plot, don't worry about it. One Punch only does what it needs to do and declares the end of the first season, and then does a new animation. The progress is completely sufficient. Shumo smiled. One Punch Man currently only has 100 words, but the content of the first season is completely enough. Just let the others take over. Anyway, if it's not over, it means you won't be able to draw a prize. The group leader nodded and said, "Okay, boss, that's okay." Although he was surprised that Shumo had become a boss and a cartoonist at such a young age, but this is fine. In order to quickly launch anime and make money, some animation company bosses will not hesitate to reduce the plot, reduce the quality of the picture, and come up with some heartwarming animations. In fact, the cartoonist is also vomiting blood. After all, it is very different from what is in his own mind, but there is no way, all authorized to buy. Now the boss of Marvel is a cartoonist himself, and he will definitely not let his cartoons be ruined. However, he is a little worried. With a large budget, the plot is not delayed, but what is the nature of the animation? It's business, it's money. According to the requirements, it is really spending money. If the TV ratings do not reach a high point, I am afraid that it will suffer a miserable loss. Marvel suffered a loss the first time it did anime, and it was undoubtedly a blow. He shook his head secretly. It was the boss who was responsible for them anyway. Anyway, they have signed the contract. It is impossible to resign them in a short time. After Shumo decided on the general direction, the entire animation team began to produce intensively. These people are worthy of being masters who dig into the corner, and they put together a clip in one afternoon. The quality of the footage is very high. It can be said that the original picture in Shumo's mind, he nodded secretly, this is the work he wanted. In the previous life, One Punch Man was originally big money, a strong lineup investment, and a certain amount of publicity, to become the hegemony of the quarter. He doesn't need to worry about the rest. When the production is completed, it will be sent over for him to check it out and then play it. When preparing to leave, Andy walked over and said excitedly, "Shumo, this time your new cartoon has turned the sky upside down." Now, in addition to the media, many protesters who oppose the registration bill are holding Marvel magazine. The influence is greater than last time, and even the 5 astronauts who are preparing to go to the sky have been suppressed by you. 5 astronauts? It should be the Fantastic Four and Dr. Doom. Shumo nodded clearly and said, "It should be induced by the Edwardian comic critic on the internet." Andy's face changed slightly, and he was surprised. "Huh? What do you mean by that? What do you think? Did you have this idea after reading it?" Shumo flipped through Byakugan when he heard the words, raised his hand and left. He paused again. "Uncle Andy, I am going to add 2 long comics to the 3rd issue, and open a new issue magazine. What is it called? At that time you will know. Welcome to watch the American Midday News. Today, Twitter has a stuttering phenomenon. The Twitter company has found out that it is a Twitter from an Edwardian comic critic. His conjecture caused a huge wave and caused server congestion. The New York Times, Boy Jump, once again attracted attention, citing the conjecture of comic critic Edward. The 2 new comics point to the Mutant registration bill being submitted by Congress. The comment from the chairman of the comics company is intriguing. Registration pioneer Mr. Giali criticized the company for being cautious in words and deeds, not to grab eyeballs with news. Cartoonists only need to draw cartoons. Later, Congressman Giali's Twitter has been captured by Rage's fanfare. The World War E veteran once again called on the relevant departments to ban the juvenile jump, thinking that the comics in the magazine were bloody and violent and did not conform to the American spirit. For 2 weeks, Tony Stark, chairman of Stark Industries, remained silent, and the police ruled out the possibility of kidnapping and extortion. Recently, since the explosion in the military laboratory, the military has made frequent actions, which are suspected to be related to the monsters that appeared recently. The person in charge, General Ross, declined to interview. Each piece of news was reported by the host, and it was all real-time reports. There are more reports that need to be reported the next day. Shumo stayed in Times Square and looked up at the screen wall, secretly saying, "The military? It's Hulk, time is getting closer." It is estimated that when Tony returns to New York, it will be a real dance of demons. Shumo looked at the pedestrians who were playing with joy around him, and he didn't know if there would be a relocation wave at that time. After all, the United States would be eventful. Shumo called Giali to come out to play for a day, as it was to relax, and copying was a hard work. As dusk approaches, this prosperous city is as high as the capital that never sleeps. I can't wait to light up the brilliant neon lights and billboards, and New York's nightlife begins. In the eyes of the public, Manhattan is divided into 2 districts. One is the Upper East Side, where the rich talk about their wine and sing songs every night. The other is the Hell's Kitchen in the West Bank. In the early years, it was a famous slum. The extremely poor living environment led to the frequent occurrence of high crimes. This area does not mean that it is really poor and has no houses to sleep on the ground, but a large group of chaotic figures of various classes. Shumo's residence is here. The gangsters were here to die. There are businesses that can't be done in other areas, such as smuggling, drugs, organ trafficking, human reselling, etc. There is no one here. Because this is the territory of the Golden Underworld Empire. Shumo wears a newly bought white baseball cap and holds the little hand of Giali, who is eating barbecue. Walking on this street, there is a street lady wearing a light gauze, a wretched little bastard, and gangsters full of tattoos. But my heart thought, this hat reminds me of platelets. It doesn't seem to be useful if I don't paint, working sell. I heard that the ordinary white hat on Taobao only costs 9 yuan, but after the word platelet is engraved, 99 yuan will be bought. Shumo really admires these businessmen for their wit. It was a day spent just like this, but it was so sudden. Bang bang bang. The gunshots suddenly rang on the street in front, and the pedestrians around them fled back as soon as they knew how to do it. Their expressions didn't have much panic, only a touch of panic. It seemed that the rush of Hell's Kitchen forced them to get used to it. Shumo is also used to it. On these days when he came here, Tenten had gunshots at night, and no one hit the gun. Regardless of them, Shumo kept moving forward in the stunned eyes of everyone. Where else could his house be in front? Shumo continued to move forward in the stunned eyes of everyone. Where else could his house be in front? The Yigao people are bold, and they are not the same Shumo who has not been counseled now. The sound of gunshots was endless, and the smell of sulfur smoke was wafting out. Under the dazzling colorful lights, Shumo and Giali came to the spot of the gun battle. At a glance, I saw a strange man in a red fancy dress fleeing, surrounded by some gangsters firing at him with guns, but in the process, the pursuers fought back a little bit and there were casualties. Well, someone? Daredevil Matt Murkdo flew back on the wall from time to time to fight back, but suddenly he heard footsteps. Because of a brave act, he was contaminated with radioactive materials spilled from the truck and caused blindness, but unexpectedly enhanced other senses. Later, under the harsh training of the blind martial arts master, Matt mastered his super senses and became a powerful warrior. During the day, he was a lawyer, and at night, he put on a mask and became a daredevil to fight crime in Hell's Kitchen in New York. Now New Yorkers call this kind of people a righteous policeman. In his world, it is different from ordinary people, and it is easy to judge that it is a large and a small citizen who has stepped into the battlefield. Wow. 2 sharp darts were in the dark, emitting cold light, making a sound of breaking through the air, and hit Daredevil's throat and eyes. The Daredevil didn't change his face, and the 2 battle batons in his hand swung loudly and knocked out the deadly darts. What are you thinking? Daredevil, oh, there are 2 little mice. Confronting him is a strong man wearing a black trench coat. What is remarkable is the target pattern painted on his forehead. He glanced at the entrance of the street with a fierce look in his eyes and smiled. Known as the Bullseye, he is a professional assassin and now the chief assassin of Jin Ning, with a natural super-throwing ability. Anything can be turned into a murder weapon in his hands. Catch them here. The Bullseye ordered the gangsters, and the gangsters smiled maliciously and walked up. He knows that Daredevil is a good old man, and it will be easy when he has a hostage. Daredevil has been destroying the underworld business recently. This time, he ambushes and catches him. This time he will undoubtedly die. Besides, these 2 are afraid of being fools. When most people hear the gunshots, they are afraid that it will be too late to avoid the 2 legs. Instead, they stupidly ran over to die. Daredevil heard the words and said in anger, "Asshole, what's coming at me?" About to turn around and rush towards Shumo, shouting loudly, "Run." As soon as the voice fell, the Bullseye threw the weapon again and then went up to fight to prevent Daredevil from going to the rescue. Yeah, it's a gang again. I've been dealing with gangsters these days. Shumo shook his head helplessly when he saw this. Frank, the last time. Who was this time? Boom. The dull sonic boom sounded in everyone's ears, and the violent shock waves swept in all directions, and the rushing energy washed the approaching gangsters. Ah. Following the screams, he rushed directly to the street. Fire. A leader decisively issued an order to intercept Daredevil, this time with well-equipped equipment, including shotguns and rocket launchers. The gangs held their guns and sprayed out continuous flames, and the thick whistle smoke filled the air, and the bright bullets gleamed under the light of dusk, and the coldness was exposed. Giali, give a shield, otherwise I have to buy new clothes. Shumo watched the big net of metal storms leaping over the sky, raised his brows, and whispered to little Lori. The toughness of LV2 has been able to truly achieve invulnerability, and the rocket bombardment is unscathed, but no nanometal or indestructible clothes will turn into rags, and it will be uncomfortable to chill. Giali lowered her head and nibbled on the barbecue, purple light flashed, and a light curtain rose in front of the two of them. The metal bullet was dumbfounded by the gang, slamming fiercely on the light curtain with waves of ripples, but there was no movement at all. Rocket missile. Boom. A missile exploded and hit the light curtain, and the shock wave of the explosion set off a cloud of smoke to obscure everyone's sight. Shumo threw out a few light wave balls and threw them in. There were wailing noises in the smoke, and the explosive thunder caused Daredevil and Bullseye, who were fighting, to look sideways. The two separated quickly, the target eye watching the gradually dissipating smoke. The scene in front of him made his eye sockets red, and his heart was shocked. There were stumps and blood everywhere, as if they had been bombed by a bomb once, and collapsed in pits and pits. He angrily said, "What the hell is going on?" Daredevil's godless eyes were taken aback for a moment, and he couldn't see the situation in the smoke from the bullseye. He had Superman senses and knew exactly what was going on. Several powerful energies destroy the flesh and blood, which is really terrifying. If you're smart, you should know how to do it. Shumo led Giali forward slowly with a long pace, exuding abyss-like eyes, said plainly. The bullseye only felt a numb scalp, and my heart trembled. Even if I didn't see it, the culprit was the young man for sure, using unknown means. Is it a mutant? What is this else? Don't be proud of the kid. This is the place of Jin Bin. Even if you are strong against the underworld empire, that is, the ants. The bullseye became more emboldened as he spoke, his hideous face became more and more crazily, and he shouted hysterically. Even if a person is very powerful, but what can be done? The underworld empire has the power of black and white, and enough manpower, it can completely sink this young man into the bottom of the sea. It seems you didn't realize the gap. Die. Although the bullseye was afraid of Shumo, he still felt that he could still fight. His eyes were as cold as lion majesty, and he locked Shumo's whole body tightly. The knife flew with his hand, and a bit of cold light flashed by. Click. A very sharp flying knife stabbed Shumo's forehead, but there was no trace of it like a majestic mountain. The tip of the knife was squeezed and curled and fell to the ground. This little thing can't hurt me. Shumo looked at the bullseye, her tone was very flat, but Giali knew that the more flat, the more angry. On the contrary, Shumo, who has the color of anger, doesn't have to worry about it. Tenten's Gali, who eats snacks, knows this. Bullseye, as the first assassin of the Golden Union, is deeply trusted. It is the first time I have seen such a hard skin that is accustomed to the world. You must know that he can kill a person with a toothpick from 90 meters away. Now the best weapon used by both sides is less than 10 meters, but nothing has changed, except that there are more flying knives on the ground. Why can't help but be stunned for a while. He stared directly at Shumo's expressionless face, he couldn't help but bursts of coldness in his heart, and fine sweat broke out on his forehead, as if it was a death beckoning dangling in front of him. Shumo smiled. It seems that there is no trick, now it's me. While talking, pick up the takeoff knife and weigh it. Before the target eye wanted to say anything, a white spot appeared in his sight, and his eyes stared dumbly, and he felt black in front of him, as if he lost consciousness, as if the ice-cold tide washed away. The bull's eye body became soft and slowly fell to the ground. The target pattern on his forehead was directly pierced, and the hole that was poked out was exactly the same size as the target. Prick. The sound of breaking through the sky is long overdue. Daredevil swallowed and looked at the wall behind the bull's eye. Although he couldn't see it, he knew that there was a hole, and he even heard the sound being left behind. In fact, it had happened long ago, just when the knife was thrown. The moment it came out, it was doomed. There is no skill, only absolute power. Shumo glanced at Daredevil, which made him a little nervous, and saw a slightly kind smile on his face. Thank you just now. Shumo is a very simple person. If he wants to be friends with him, he will also be friends with others, but whoever wants to calculate him behind his back, or play him head on, will have the ending. Before, Daredevil called them to escape when he looked at them, and at the same time, he also acted. Even though it was superfluous to Gali Shumo, it still shows that he is kind. Jin will find you, the whole of New York is shrouded in his dark empire. Daredevil said deeply. It won't bother you to worry about it, goodbye. Daredevil screamed at Shumo's back and left, and secretly said, both of them are unfathomable, and this little girl is also a superpower. He heard Shumo's words to Giali, and the bullet was stopped later, and he guessed it. Shumo walked a few steps forward and then asked, do you want to read comics? Comics? I haven't watched it for nearly 10 years. Daredevil didn't know what it meant, so he didn't answer. Look at Boy Jump, which I drew. Shumo raised his hand and disappeared into the dim street with Giali. This boy. Daredevil didn't know how to describe him, besides, he didn't even know his name. In a few moments, when Daredevil was groping for useful information on his bullseye body, A burly man in a black skull t-shirt climbed over the wall and gently landed beside Daredevil. You killed it? Matt, he looked around. There were Bullseye lying on the ground, puddles full of blood, and the scene was extremely bloody. This is completely different from Daredevil's handling style. No, it's a teenager. Daredevil said bitterly. What he wanted to do was easily done by a young man. Is he too weak? Still others are too strong. At this time, he still smelled a distinctive smell of blood, and asked in doubt, Frank, are you injured? The Punisher Frank held his hand to the wound on his arm wrapped in a scarf, and said depressed, I didn't react just now and was cut off by something suddenly, but in the end I didn't find the reason. Forehead. Daredevil's ears flicked, and the motion on his hands continued without stopping. I want you to come and see how the bull's eye will die. Daredevil pointed to the corpse's forehead. It seems lucky. Late at night, a chubby figure sitting on a massage chair, a bright bald head, a custom suit that can be wrapped in obesity, with a cheerful smile on his lips. It's like an ordinary fat rich man who likes to have fun, but he is actually the underworld ruler, Jin Bin, who has changed even director George's talk. He slowly got up from the chair and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking down from a high altitude to the prosperous but secretly surging New York. Jin Bin slowly closed his eyes, as if he could hear the sweet wine that made him addicted. There was no smell of crime. As the largest underworld force in the United States, 40% of the criminal activities in the United States are related to him, and Daredevil's #1 enemy. Wilson Fisker, who has been unruly and self-conscious since he was young. His father was a gang and died in the street fighting. With his super-criminal mind and good personal strength, he successfully ascended to the throne of the leader and firmly held the American gang in his hands. At the same time, he succeeded in packaging and became a well-known entrepreneur and real estate tycoon. Half of the police station was bought by him. The mayor and the court prosecutor did not want to see him because he had the deadly handle of these people. But at the end he felt an unprecedented emptiness, because when he came back, he had always been alone. Knocking. Knocking. At this moment, there was a knock on the door, which seemed a little urgent. Boss. Something happened to the Bullseye boss. The next morning a long cordon was pulled up on the street. It was not the police but a group of people in black who came back, headed by Collison. Sir. Found the same crack as last time. Coulson knelt down and stroked the cracked ground, solemnly said, It seems he is here. I got up and looked around, with a little joy in my heart. In fact, there were no major clues in the police inspection report in the building last time. Under the department's own detection, clues that the police had missed were still found. And this was the guess that the young policeman thought at the time, and the blow from the blast spread to the surface and cracked it. This speculation was baseless and whimsical in the eyes of ordinary people like the police, so it was rejected by the staff at that time. But in the special department where Coulson works, they specialize in handling exceptions. For them, this is not a wild card, but a completely possible possibility. At that time, all the surveillance cameras in the building were out of control, and even the probes near the periphery were partially destroyed, completely black. And this time he appeared in the Hell's Kitchen, and his instinct was telling him that he would kill the mutants and ninjas on the spot by overcoming the gangster Frank. The murderous target lives here. Hey, what did Shumo eat today? I found out that you have never been in the kitchen. If I do, you dare to eat. At this moment, a small unvoiced sound came from the edge of the cordon. After hearing the reputation, Collison saw a young man with an Asian face pulling a little girl out slowly, and the two were talking. Soon, the two of them glanced at each other the moment they passed by, and they were all calm. Collison squinted his eyes to look at Shumo's back, and he felt something in his heart that it was really easy life. Touching the hairline on his head, a trace of sadness rose in his heart. Since he entered this department, he hasn't had a stable day. He worked day and night, and his hair fell out. This is very predictable in his early years. When he wants to go out shopping, brag or play around with friends, it's a pity that the reality is cruel. Even 365 days a year, Collison, who has been on 1010's 12-hour non-stop, is only an 8th level agent, and he doesn't know how long he wants to get to the 9th level. I didn't expect S.H.I.E.L.D. to react so quickly, beyond my expectations. When Shumo took Giali out, he saw the Marvel agent Collison, who was often active in Marvel. They were checking the cause of death of the Bullseye and others last night. It is impossible for these to alarm S.H.I.E.L.D. They should deal with some alien incidents, and when should they be concerned about the gang? The only thing that attracted their attention was the battle that took place in the Frank building. Is there anything missing? Shumo was puzzled. He didn't expect that S.H.I.E.L.D. would only use a crack to guess. If he knew it, he would only be depressed. Shumo, I want to eat 3 pizzas and steaks. The two were sitting in a restaurant in Times Square, and Giali pouted. Shumo glanced at the menu and sneered. Okay, it looks like you eat like pigs. Liar. Look at my slender figure. Giali stood up in dissatisfaction and turned around, attracting the attention of some diners. Shumo flipped through Byakugan, and it was true that Giali had a special physique and wouldn't be fat even if she was eating. Her posture was still light-sounding and soft, not easy to overturn. Shumo. Why are you laughing so wretchedly? Giali said with confidence as she touched her head. Why do you say that? Shumo didn't change her face, but was slightly surprised. Does this little loli have the same telepathy as Professor X? Can actually see his thoughts. Huh, I guess. Giali curled her lips and sat back on the chair. Sir, can I sit here? A 17 or 18-year-old girl with short hair came over with a dinner plate and asked Shumo. Certainly. The short-haired girl thanked her and sat opposite Shumo. Gale stared at her with blinking eyes and said, Miss Sister, what is your name? Lorna Dan. How about you? Lorna is a European face, with obvious Germanic facial features, slightly thin body, pale skin giving a person a kind of swaying in the wind, but the green eyes reveal unyielding strength, and the black hair color makes the overall appearance. People can't help but pity. Golly, he is Shumo, a fool. Giali pointed to Shumo and shouted. Shumo took the waiter's dinner plate and put it directly on the table, with a dark face and said, I don't have you for today, so be hungry. My food, give it back to me. The three of them faced each other. Seeing that they were embarrassed by each other but they were very emotional, the corners of her mouth couldn't help but smile, and then it dimmed. As an orphan, she was alone on the streets of the society for a long time, and she really envied such feelings. Eat yours. Shumo brought the 3 copies in front of Giali and was unhappy, and paused. After eating, I will go to the company, and then you will go back by yourself. Oh. Lorna's ears trembled, her eyes struggling and erratic. She quickly became firm, and asked timidly. Mr. Shumo, is your company short of people? Can I call you Lorna? Shumo asked tentatively. After seeing Lorna nodding, he continued. We are a comic company, but I am the only manga artist, most of whom are anime producers. Do you have any work experience in this area, Lorna? Only then did he discover that Lorna's plate was not steak pizza, but the cheapest dessert, indicating that life was very difficult. As soon as the voice fell, Lorna's eyes dimmed, and she lowered her head weakly and replied, I'm sorry, I don't have the talent in this area. She didn't even have a technical diploma, and she was carrying a police theft record on her back. No one would let her work. Lorna just wanted to try, but the result was the same as before. She knew that those without a diploma would either go to the restaurant to be a waiter, but the most important thing was that she had no relevant documents, which meant she was a shady. It is impossible to find a job here without the support of your loved ones, unless it is illegal to go to a gang. Shumo had no choice but to spread his hands, expressing powerlessness. He didn't just kneel and lick when he saw beautiful women. He would give money like a good person. If a friend like Peter wants to work in his company, even if he doesn't know how to produce, he can put it on the comics channel or financial management. In his eyes, there are only 3 kinds of people, the good people, the unrelated people, and the dead. Lorna only saw less than 3 minutes. It was obviously an unrelated person, and it was not worth his salary to raise someone who knew nothing. The company was not a restaurant without a waiter. Shumo, is it okay to let her come? She won't be able to learn it. Giali didn't know what to do. She just said nice things for Lorna when she saw her. Yes, sister, you can learn. Lorna raised a glimmer of hope and said, I work very hard and learn everything quickly. Like the last straw in a drowning man, this is not an exaggeration but a fact. In fact, she lost her source of money very early. The money for this dessert was stolen by Lorna with her ability, and she was going to leave this bustling city that could not accommodate her, looking everywhere for her father's whereabouts. If possible, she still wants to live in New York. Giali, what kind of job do you think Lorna can do? Shumo was shocked. Giali is not stupid and sweet. Her belly is so dark that it is impossible to speak to strangers like this, which is not in the usual state. So the only problem is that this girl named Lorna Dan has something on her body that caught Giali's attention. In the next second, Giali's words made Shumo's face stagnant, and he didn't expect to answer like this at all. It's your assistant for drawing comics. Well, I think you are very tired too. Don't you want to paint and update in the future? Just relieve yourself of the pressure. Giali chuckled. Shumo wanted to hit her a little bit. Giali lives with Shumo every day, and more secrets of both parties are exposed. Shumo's system virtual projection will show traces when printed on paper. And this trace is the original words of his painting a gourd, but this trace can be seen in the eyes of ordinary people. And the system interface is invisible to ordinary people in Superman, which makes it appear out of thin air. Giali knows that she never asks. In her opinion, this is superpower. Letting Lorna be his assistant is bound to see this scene, so she will know that Shumo is not an ordinary person, and what is the point of Giali doing this? Looking at Giali's coquettish expression, a look that you would make a mistake if you didn't agree. Shumo was silent for a while, and said to Lorna, I'm free now? Go to my house and try it first. Okay. Lorna hesitated, worried that Shumo would change his mind to her identity, and decisively agreed. One more steak. This is a gift from the boss to reward prospective employees. Lorna watched the delicious food served. The steak was still something she remembered. She was stunned for a while, her eyes flushed, as if something was about to show. She wiped her eyes, glanced at the two people who were looking at her, and thanked them with blushing cheeks. Thank you. This is the best gift I have received. Shumo didn't go to the company but took Giali and Lorna back the same way. There were no blockades on the street and the people from S.H.I.E.L.D. had already left, but he firmly believed that plain clothes would flood the Hell's Kitchen. Lorna looks around the room like Grandma Lu in the Grand View Garden. The building is divided into 2 floors, with a living room, kitchen and lounge on the first floor, and 3 bedrooms and a study on the second floor. It seems that there is no way to compare with the rich, but here is a very good Western-style house in Hell's Kitchen. When the 3 of them walked into the study, Lorna found a lot of paintings on the table, as well as many painting tools. She walked up and found many exquisite patterns. Shumo stared at her with big eyes, and motioned to Giali. Now it's time to talk. What's up? Seeing this, Giali smiled and ran to Lorna and asked gently, Sister Lorna, are you a mutant? In the next moment, Lorna was delighted to look at the painting and her eyes widened in astonishment. At the same time, the painting fell on the table, the biggest secret and identity were exposed, and the nervous and uneasy emotions were surging. As the fluctuation increased, a series of clang-clang sounds suddenly rang up and down the building. Shumo looked around. All kinds of metal products, including the keys to the trouser pocket, all tremble automatically, centering on the girl in front of him, all floating, like stars holding the moon and flying towards her. Magnetic field, metal, is Magneto's daughter. Still exactly the same. Shumo narrowed his eyes, the energy flow around his body began to crackle, and the airwave began to surge. He recalled carefully, and segments flashed in his head and subconsciously said, wonderful talent? Lorna Dan. She is indeed the daughter of Magneto King. Shumo thought about it, and couldn't help but complain. This is too miserable. I can't afford to eat. What is Lao Wan doing normally? Sister Lorna, calm down, otherwise I would be very angry. Giali yelled, her eyes twinkled with purple light, and a terrifying breath erupted from her body and enveloped Lorna. Like the shadow of death, hovering on Lorna, who was in a cold sweat, she knew what the end was going to be without a doubt. Obviously there is no movement, the metal is still floating around, but there is no sense of security at all. Sister Lorna, mutants are nothing here, haven't you found them yet? You are also mutants? Lorna stared at the sphere of light circling around Shumo, and the overflowing wave and oscillation space was really terrifying. No, but we are all superpower, we can talk about it. Golly. What do you mean by manga assistant? Shumo raised his brows and asked. Sister Lorna, here you are. Giali heard the words, picked up 3 metal paintbrushes from the drawer and handed them over. Control it. Giali, you can really think about it. The cartoonist's assistant is usually provided by the publisher for the author. The assistant works with the author to create, and may be responsible for any aspect of the work, usually the work on the picture, and less work involving the core of teaching such as story and storytelling. But if it is an assistant hired by the writer, it is equivalent to training and teaches everything. His job is to reduce the workload of cartoonists. Generally speaking, there are more or less medium-length cartoonists. If a Sankei cartoonist like Shumo was in Dongying's previous life, at least 3 assistants needed to process the images. It's also a shame to copy it according to the gourd painting, otherwise Shumo would not be able to complete the 3 manuscripts before handing in the manuscript, but what about later? The projected traces just save the cartoonist's creative thinking, typesetting and frequent adjustments of the lens. In fact, the real workload is not much less. As time goes by, Shumo will inevitably draw more comics, and he will be exhausted just by copying. Besides, this is Marvel, who knows if unexpected circumstances will delay the drawing. It is necessary to have a few cartoonist assistants, unless you learn clone technique or something, it will be too late. But the cartoonist's assistant has to observe Shumo's drawing process up close. If such an unknown drawing method is leaked out, it will still be very troublesome. Giali had planned to equip Shumo with an assistant, because Shumo would have time to play with her, but she had to think carefully about who to choose. On this day, she discovered that the genetic fluctuations in Lorna's body were exactly the same as the mutants in Frank Mansion, and at the same time, the overflowing magnetic field control made Giali's brain flash. If ordinary cartoonists are frightened here, I saw 3 brushes rubbing on the drawing paper out of thin air, and the sound of the nib rubbing against it was gently heard. The images on the 3 drawing papers are a bit messy, specious, and in some places, there was a mess of graffiti. It was Lorna who was controlling the traces of the 3 paintbrushes mapped on the 3 virtual split-screen projections to take pictures of the gourd, but the effect was very poor. Shumo rubbed Giali and said speechlessly, "Even if you paint at the same time, the human spirit is limited, and there is no way to do Ishin's 3 uses." Oh. Giali was a little frustrated, and she didn't expect this to happen. She thought that a few more brushes would reduce the pressure. Shumo looked at Lorna, who looked a little nervous. Now she seemed to be a frightened rabbit, and even the slightest turmoil would provoke an overreaction. Although metal products suspended in midair did not bring her a sense of security, it was better than nothing. Seeing this, Shumo said gently, "Lorna, I see that your life is unsatisfactory. How about I give you a salary and you be my assistant?" "Huh? Didn't you say no?" Giali was anxious and glared at Shumo and shouted. She said that Ishin couldn't be used for 3 purposes, so why did she call in a blink of an eye and throw me away? Fool. I can't use Ishin for 3 times, don't you know how to practice Ishin for 2 uses? You. HMPH, Sister Lorna was introduced by me. Thanks to me, you won't be exhausted. Lorna ignored the dispute between the two. She was thinking about the possibility of this job. She urgently needs money to improve her life. Ishin can still do it with the 2nd use. After thinking about it, she found that there were no other options at all. Even if Shumo and Giali are not mutants, the identity of superpower still needs to be hidden. If she refuses, there is a possibility of leakage. I am afraid that she will really die before she goes out. Don't look at Giali's elder sister, so happy. Lorna can see that her belly is so dark that she can hold a boat. The sentence just now is definitely not a joke, but a threat. That is to say, she can only be an assistant, and after another thought, she still has a salary, which is not too miserable. After Lorna gradually figured it out, the trembling metal products began to slowly float back to the original position, ending the shaking. For a while, the building returned to quiet. Lorna asked vigilantly, "What are you talking about?" "Of course, your salary is $2,000 a month, and the working hours are my painting time. Work with me, usually 5 hours. If it is really difficult, I can also provide accommodation for free and prepare food by myself, but the condition for living in is to clean up the daily garbage. How about it?" Lorna's green eyes flashed with joy. Such a salary can be said to be a high salary. If you can live in just part-time chores, you can get a free residence. The welfare is very generous, and it can be said that such good conditions will not be found in the future. But she had always been stubborn and felt like she was leaving the accommodation behind. She was silent for a while and said, "I can be an assistant, but I'll live outside." Lorna is a person with a contradictory personality. On the one hand, she envied such a good house to live in. It must be very comfortable. On the other hand, she was born independent and strong to face such a situation. "Lorna, I can see that the place where you live is nothing more than an abandoned factory, a hollow under the high bridge. At the same time, as a mutant, you need to hide in Tibet and be threatened forever, which is not conducive to work." Shumo observed some moving eyes and faintly encouraged. "You might as well live down first and plan slowly later." At this point, Lorna climbed down the ladder and nodded in response. "Okay." Lorna didn't have a gift pack. After eating the dessert, she left New York with no papers as she thought. So Lorna's illegal cohabitation began. Huh. It's the sound of the brush painting on the paper again. The difference from the previous one is that there are 2 pieces of paper this time. The effect is obvious. Even if there are many mistakes, it is generally not a big problem. Shumo sighed. Lorna lacked the basis of painting. Even if it didn't look very good to copy, he would look through the changes together at the end to strive for the best. With more practice, Lorna's Ishin 2nd use is able to achieve a general level of painting, and this method is of great help to her ability to control metal. When he published the 2nd issue of the magazine, he was worried about the troubles caused by many comics. "One person's energy is not enough. I will copy more than a dozen comics for you, and I want to be able to copy every single sentence in a week. This will slow down the speed of comics, and there is no time to draw new comics. To solve this method, you can only choose to cut off some of the previous comics or stop the update. This can only be a drop in the bucket, not the root cause. Now that Lorna can use Ishin to reduce the workload of 2 comics, let him have more energy to deal with the new comics." In this way, Shumo asked Lorna to be responsible for the 2 books of Giant and Ghoul, who had no very good foundation in painting skills, and started working on 2 new comics by herself. One of the skills in one of the comics is to be able to liberate from copying comics, but also participate in the drawing of each book, so that my brain has a sufficient impression. That is as time passed, S.H.I.E.L.D. did not find the door, and the underworld Ghoul did not break in the middle of the night. In short, the new week has slowly passed by half of the three people's daily routines, and Lorna has also mastered Ishin's second use, making it easier to copy. However, she also looked depressed at how the drawing could appear out of thin air. What kind of ghost power is this? Knowing that Shumo's earning from these comics alone is astronomical for her, she plans to paint seriously. Cartoonists are so popular. Shumo didn't tell her that many other cartoonists can't even afford to eat, only he can earn cramps. Seeing Lorna's serious attitude, Shumo also taught the basics of painting hand in hand, so that she could improve her painting skills. On this day, Shumo took a look at the fan value and then let Lorna continue to work with his patience and excitement, and then went back to the bedroom. Calling out the system interface, the fan value has reached more than 1.6 million points. This value makes him excited. You must know that last week there was only 1 million, and this week only half passed. It seems that the concept of fan value defined again can be provided multiple times. For example, Manmi A is a sincere fan of One Punch, and can only provide 10 fan points a month, but he is also a regular fan of Attack on Titan, and Tokyo Ghoul, and he can also provide 2 fans per month. Value. As long as he likes, and even every book can become a fan, such people are not uncommon in comics, there are many more. Moreover, when it comes to the excitement peak contradiction plot, sincere fans can also become loyal fans. It is impossible for a person to be loyal to only one manga. At the beginning, Shonen Jump once investigated the overlapping rate of fans of migrant manga such as Dead Huahai Quanzhao Yao very high. It can be seen that the number of comics will increase in the future, and it is possible to have 1 million fans a day. After thinking about it for a while, Shumo said on the lottery interface, "System, adjust the lottery specifications, 1 times 600,000, 1 times 500,000, 5 times 100,000. Directly 1 million at a time cannot afford to spend, wait for more in the future to talk about it. The first is 5 times 100,000. The rarity is too small, and the chance of seeing a face is very high. Congratulations to host, get the Genos power source fragment X1. A battery with a dim light was floating in the air, and an introduction popped up at the same time. Genos power source fragment. Collect 3 to synthesize a power source, containing powerful energy, as the core of machinery and energy driving. Shumo didn't lose it, it seemed to be useful and dragged into the system warehouse. Congratulations to host, for getting a 3-dimensional mobile device. With a sound of brushing, several tools appeared on the ground out of thin air, including ejectors, transmitters, fans, main parts, gas tanks, triggers, belt structures, telescopic ropes, and a complete set of devices. The 3-dimensional mobile device is one of the military equipment in Attack on Titan. It is used to effectively hit the giant's back muscles and is very practical in comics. It's a pity that it's a joke here in Marvel. Shumo put it in a garbage bag without saying anything, and put it aside for Lorna to throw it away. Continue. Congratulations to host, for getting Mikas's red scarf. Shumo took a look at the red scarf in his hand. It has no special features. It feels silky and soft. It is purely handmade textile. It is a good scarf even in the 21st century. He put it on the table and will give it to Giali later, but he hasn't given little Lori a gift for so long. After drawing 3 impractical prizes in a row, Shumo was not discouraged. He knew that the first draw was really lucky, and now this probability is normal. Shumo continued. Come again. Congratulations to host, get the Highbow fragment X1 of Ghoul. A group of bright red flesh and blood appeared in front of Shumo. He could clearly see this group of flesh squirming from time to time, which was very active in cells. Hebao. Collect 3 fragments to synthesize Hebao. It is an exclusive organ of Ghoul, used to store RC cells that are already in the body or after eating and supplementing. In its own state, a large number of RC cells can be released from Hebao, and the skin will form a unique predator Hezi. Multiple Hebags in the whole body can become an heirloom. EMMM and Shumo are also put in the warehouse. Even if they are synthesized, he doesn't want to use them. The increase in strength is limited and he has to eat human flesh. Congratulations to host, for getting the fat second piece of Godelishi. In Shumo's astonishment, a group of purple cloth fell in the air and unconsciously spread it out. Driven by the male instinct, he sniffed. Yes, it is original. System, don't your heart hurt? Shumo hurriedly threw it into the trash can, feeling that Giali would discover that he was abnormal, and finally put it directly into the bottom of the trash bag where the 3-dimensional mobile device was just placed, and took a deep breath. He never remembered this thing in comics. It seems that the scope of the lottery is not limited to the picture or the whole world exposed in a deeper level. At this point, the 500,000 draws are over. Without the skill fragments he wants, It seems that as the number of comics increases, the rarity of the 100,000 draws is almost impossible to draw. Shumo looked at the fan value. There are more than 1.1 million points, originally planned to be divided into 500,000 and 600,000 each. But the practical and effective rewards of the previous 500,000 draws gave him some ideas. The system, the remaining readjustment specifications, is divided into 1 time 500,000 yuan, 2 times 300,000 yuan. Shumo thought for a while and said, since the 100,000 rarity reward is almost gone, let's take a look at 300,000. It's fine if there is a mall. It's so cool to have a direct Krypton gold. He sighed and missed the online games of his previous life. I don't have money to play FCK. Recharging makes me happy. At this moment, the mechanical voice of the system sounded slightly emotional in his mind. Detected that the host is full of resentment and desire, the malfunction will be launched after the system is upgraded. Shumo heard this and said with a black face, now I am full of resentment and desire to give it away for free, can I give it? Cannot. When will you upgrade? Shumo also knows that this is impossible, so he babbles. If there is a malfunction, it will be cool at that time, but I am afraid the demand is also scary. The system upgrade conditions are unknown, please find out on your own. Yes, it turned out to be a howling head. Shumo scorned and said depressed, let's get started. For the first 300,000 draw, the turntable began to spin. Respect to the host, get the bald cloak Saitama fragment X2, and the ability to arm the gorilla, sensitive fragment X1. Saitama fragment. Collect 10 pieces to summon Saitama, and keep a friendly trust in the host. One character fragment looks like a piece of a puzzle put into the warehouse. The other is a skill fragment. The pattern is a shadow moving at a high speed. The number 3 weird from the House of Evolution, a ghost-level disaster. Shumo is a little disappointed that the orangutan is not as good as the vaccine man, but this skill happens to be his shortcoming. After Shumo equipped with the sensitive fragments, a green light came off the system interface and went out into the sea and flooded into his limbs. He immediately felt the body's ease. I tried my skills in the bedroom and walked on the wall with ease, but I don't know how fast it is, so I'll test it later. Such speed, strength, and defense are guaranteed, plus long-range means can be said to be an all-round development. Shumo secretly said with joy, come again. The consumption of 300,000 fans is still worthwhile, and the second 300,000 lottery starts to spin. Congratulations to the host for getting a pair of Jinmu Research Shard X1, Mikasa Ackerman Shard X3, Saitama Shard X1, and a pair of Saitama red gloves. MMP, it's fragments, and it's all fragments of characters. At present, they can't be used at all. Shumo ignored the red gloves and put the puzzle pieces into the warehouse. Shumo was a little depressed. How did he feel that the appearance rate of the fragments was so high, and the skill fragments were fortunate to say, the characters had to be collected to be useful, and now they can only be left dry. The system prompts. Host, please continue to draw. There is 500,000 lucky draw left. Shumo muttered to himself that it must be a European, with a breezy expression on his face. You must draw, you must draw. Congratulations to the host. Get a Genos Incinerator, Vaccine Man package skills, White Wave Ball Fragment X1, Sensitive Fragment X1, Regeneration Fragment X1. Several rays of light appeared in the air. The first to appear was a slender mechanical barrel. Genos Incinerator. The equipment conditions are robots and modified people. It needs to be used with Genos power source or has a high energy core. It is powerful and can be upgraded. Incinerator is the main attack method of Xenos, the S-position hero. Although he is embarrassed every time, his strength is not bad. Shumo clearly remembered that this gun would destroy the ground base of the House of Evolution. If it hadn't been for him, he would have installed it. Shumo shook his head, and had to reluctantly put the incinerator into the warehouse for future plans, and then looked at other white light groups, which contained the skill fragments he needed. Regeneration fragments. The Earth grants vaccine people a strong regeneration ability, which has a certain limit. This skill with a green cross pattern will provide Shumo with a strong endurance ability and install it directly. A warm flow of heat rushed around in the body, and the cells on and under the body were washed away by the warm current, and the vitality was greatly increased. The icon of the white wave ball has also been upgraded from 2 to 3, and the entire sphere is also one size bigger. Its power is self-evident. System. How is the sensitivity of the vaccine man the same as that of the orangutan? Shumo raised his brows and saw that the sensitive fragments were exactly the same as before, and he couldn't help but wonder. Host. You will know it when you equip it. Equipment. The fragments turned into green light and flooded into his body. Shumo, who was too late to relax, looked at the skill panel with a surprised expression. Engraved with the word, sensitive. The icon depicting a figure moving at high speed has changed from 1 to 2 in the upper right corner. This is host. This is passive overlap. Passive overlap refers to the overlap of passive skills. Each passive skill is extracted from related characters, such as sensitivity. The two fragments have different sources. In fact, the changes to the human body can be superimposed. What's the matter with the full level being level 10? It's not that level 10 is the full version. Who is the standard for such different stackings? Shumo asked. I thought it was two separate skills before, but I didn't expect them to be superimposed and changed. After a systematic explanation, Shumo figured it out. The skills are all level 10 full. After the active skills reach the full level, the ultimate power of the comics can be exerted, while the passive skills can be matched with each other, and no separate module icon will appear. At the same time, if you feel dissatisfied, you can unload it. The power produced by different combinations is naturally different. If 9 of the 10 sensitive fragments are vaccine people and 1 is armed with orangutans, then the speed at full level will be weaker than that of the complete vaccine people. On the contrary, if 9 people are vaccine people and 1 is poros, it is much faster than the complete vaccine people. Understood. Although the apes are worse than nothing. Shumo nodded and stared at the skill module. Currently passive skills have LV2 toughness, LV1 monster power, LV2 sensitivity, and LV1 regeneration. The active skill is only the white wave ball, which seems thin, but the power of LV3 is completely sufficient as an attack. In addition, Shumo also practices various close combat on weekdays, not to mention the masters, but the fights can be considered vivid. In this lottery, Shumo didn't know whether he should say his face was black or white. There were also skill fragments, character fragments and objects, but it was hard to say whether it was worth 1.6 million. Shumo scratched his head. He didn't know how to express his mood. He didn't show any frustrated expression on his face. He took the garbage bag and the red scarf and walked to the living room. Shumo. What do you hide in the study, so much to throw away? The little hamster like Giali, who was lying on the sofa eating snacks and watching the animation channel, caught a glimpse of the raised garbage bag and ran over and shouted. Did you hide a lot of food? If you didn't give it to me, you stole it yourself. Giali looked affirmative, and looked at the garbage bag, wanting to turn it over. Oops. There is also a purple fat time in the bag. Shumo mentions it on his throat, but there is no fluctuation on his face. He secretly said, it must not leak, otherwise it will be regarded as abnormal. Expressionless but panicked, Shumo quickly dangled the red scarf in front of Giali's eyes and said with a smile, want or not, this is a gift from me. Giali glanced at it. This was the first time Shumo had given her a gift. Her heart was itchy. She snatched the scarf directly regardless of the trash bag and looked at it. Shumo took the opportunity to put down the scarf. Seeing Giali's attention shifted, he quickly picked up the garbage bag and went out. He didn't plan to let Lorna throw it away, who knew if he would open it when he was curious, or throw it himself. Shumo quickly looked around the street with a guilty conscience, and looked back from time to time to see if Giali did not catch up. He took a long breath and let go of his heart. Boom. Shumo directly threw the garbage bag to the recycling bin, turned around and ran away, but as soon as her front foot left, Lorna appeared from the street entrance and saw Shumo's back with her back foot. She looked a little hurried. Lorna came out to buy painting tools. A few days ago, she used Shumo's painting tools. Now if she wants to be a cartoonist, she must have her own painting tools. She looked around and there was nothing unusual, except that she was inexplicable, and walked back behind Shumo. Not long after, a little loli was walking down the street, bounced with excitement on her face, secretly happy. The big daddy sent me to school. The nerd inside was really stupid, and one named Peter Parker looked very good. Bully, try him tomorrow. After Mindy and Damon cut their enemies, Damon sent her daughter to high school. In fact, she was too young to study, but she couldn't stand the money and brains. Mindy was admitted as a self-taught talent, and successfully became a high school freshman, but after entering, her mischievous and violent personality still existed, as if she became a school elder sister. Hey, girl, you look good, even if you are a little younger, you can come and play with us. Seeing that Minty was small and exquisite, the gangsters surrounded him with daring hearts. One of them raised a knife and threatened. Hee hee. Mindy showed an innocent expression, walked over timidly, and said softly. Big brother, be gentle, remember to pay. Haha, do you have to pay for it? Come, come. The gang leader heard this voice really sensational, and laughed wretchedly and stretched out evil claws. However, in the next moment, the scream of ah came out, making the pedestrians passing by shudder, never expected to be so cruel and cruel at such an age. Mindy abolished the last half of his life, and overpowered the gangsters with 2 or 3 tricks, and then he directly got them wounded and searched for money. Cut. Just get out of the gang for just that little money. Mindy kicked again and let the gangster fall beside the trash pile in the recycle bin, grabbing everywhere while struggling, and happened to grab a trash bag rope away. Crack. The contents of the trash bag rolled out, and Mindy glanced at it, and her eyes suddenly lit up. In the evening, the afterglow of the sunset falls on every corner of New York, and the charming dusk always makes people linger. As the summer breeze blows, Shumo walks the street with Loli and Gwen in his left hand. The colorful lights and all kinds of pedestrians make up the night view of New York. Shumo successfully concealed Giali and Lorna to avoid being regarded as perverts. Otherwise, what should he do with his development plan? What do Lorna's students think of him as a teacher by then? Fortunately, the above assumption does not hold. In the evening, Shumo invited Lorna to go out for dinner, but Lorna refused, saying that she could handle it, and then she became addicted to drawing and practicing superpower. Shumo knows that this is actually a polite remark. Lorna is born to be strong. In her opinion, accommodation can be exchanged for cleaning and chores, and eating food for others to please is not just being kept under the fence and being taken care of. The salary is high enough, and Lorna doesn't want to do this, so she staggers dinner with Shumo. Shumo planned to go home directly after eating, but on the way he met Gwen, who was shopping and buying goods. At her invitation, Shumo took the unwilling 3 of Giali and took a walk on the street. Man. Giali kicked the small gravel, with a lollipop in her mouth, talking about it, and there was a lot of snacks in her small backpack that Gwen sent. Shumo, I can't get out of Dr. Connors these days, so the phone call time is much less. Gwen was a little embarrassed to say that since Shumo saved people from a difficult situation in the carnival incident, especially the final eye contact was like being shot by Cupid's arrow. Therefore, Gwen has been paying attention to Shumo. He has bought the new issue of comic magazines, but he is indifferent to his classmate Peter. Shumo knows all this. Therefore, Shumo feels a little unnatural every time he meets Peter on the street. It's amazing to dig a corner, but it doesn't feel guilty to him. Shumo waved his hand and said, "It's okay. I've been a bit busy these days. New comics and new magazines have to be prepared before they can be delivered in time." Gwen opened her pink lips in a little surprise. He didn't expect Shumo to start a new comic again. Now that she is about to associate with Shumo, the comic industry should also learn more about it. Generally speaking, a cartoonist has to work together with his assistant to write a story a week. Shumo has opened 3 times now, and he also publishes new cartoons. For other cartoonists, it is a fantasy. Serializing so many would hurt your body. You can call in more assistants to complete it, Gwen said worriedly. It's okay, I have a sense of measure, and the assistant found one too. That's good. Gwen couldn't say anything after seeing this. After all, the relationship between the 2 parties has not been determined. Moreover, Shumo also understands. She can see that the person who has emerged from the shadow of the parents' plane crash is a brand new person. The 2 and Loli strolled on the streets of this feasting city. Gwen looked at Gwen as her younger sister, so she always bought delicious food for delivery. And when Giali got the benefits, she shouldn't eat the light bulb by herself, which made Gwen a little embarrassed, and it was too edible. Shumo and Gwen were given time for the 2 to spend time alone, chatting with each other about some interesting things they had seen, and also talked about Peter and Harry and comic magazines. Unknowingly, the atmosphere became strange, a little excited, and their breath was in each other, permeated between. While walking, Gwen, who is usually outgoing, now looks shy and immature. With his left hand leaning towards Shumo's right hand little by little, she has to act now, who has never been in love. All this couldn't escape Shumo's feeling, and his right hand directly greeted him and grabbed the white tender hand firmly. Gwen's heart was about to jump out, and the warm body temperature of his left hand wrapped in a big hand penetrated in, and his cheeks slowly appeared crimson. Shumo, who had always been composed, couldn't help being stunned. Just as the 2 were about to have a good time, a sharp siren on the street rang from far to near, scaring them apart. Several police cars squeezed towards the bridge not far away. Shumo looked over and said thoughtfully, "I thought my father-in-law was going to catch me." When Gwen heard this, he slapped his hand and said, "Look at what you said." It seemed natural this time, and both of them took the first step without any embarrassment. "Go and see." "Okay, Gary, don't just eat to keep up." Shumo took Gwen's hand, holding the slightly jealous Giali on the other side, and walked towards the bridge in a hurry. The change is also clear. A crane hung a school bus outside the bridge, and the river below it is deep and bottomless. In the faint night sky, there was a figure hovering up and down on the bridge, and the dark eyes that looked like a ghost flickered. Shumo raised his brows and saw this thrilling scene. It was him again, Norman Osborn, and Green Goblin. Secretly murmured. When others pass through Marvel, they usually meet the rich man Tony to save him from danger. How can he come here? Tony has never seen him once, but he is always connected with Peter. However, the two of the same people are slogans. Gia ha ha ha. Green Goblin, the murderer who caused the carnival terror, stepped on the flight machine and hovered over the bridge, laughing wildly. Green Goblin saw the police rushing to use a miniature missile to launch at the intersection without a word. A loud and brilliant fire illuminates the night view of New York. The sound of the explosion is deafening, and the fire waves disperse around. The cars on the bridge began to panic and collided one after another, all crowded together. Not long after, the bridge blocked the bridge and became a long buoy out of sight. The people who got out of the car screamed again and again, and the scene was chaotic. At the same time, the police cars coming to the rescue also came in, so they could only choose to run on foot. The three of Shumo stood not far away, and Gwen panicked. What to do? The police are too late. Shumo comforted. This is New York. I think the neighbor is about to appear. Sure enough. A red-skinned film and television steel jungle was pediatric, sprayed with spider silk and swung over. Oh, this isn't the superhero Spider-Man. Green Goblin exclaimed excitedly, grabbing Mary Jane in one hand, and dangling the school bus rope in the other, roaring with hatred. Then choose to save the beloved woman, or an innocent child. How about Spider-Man? No, you can't do this. Spider-Man begged. How could he abandon either side? Then I will help you choose. How could Green Goblin let Spider-Man think about it, let go of his hands without saying a word, and in a scream, the school bus and Mary fell at the same time. Omega. Gwen couldn't help closing his eyes, and the crowd onlookers heard the cry for help, and they cried out in shock. However, Spider-Man didn't just stare. First, he flew towards Mary and hugged the goddess of dreams. At the same time, the spider silk popped up and operated like a tiger and successfully rescued the children and Mary in the school bus. However, this also caused Spider-Man to become a living target in order to hold the school bus hanging in the air. Green Goblin rushed toward Spider-Man with a flight that ejected its blade. Bang bang bang. Several gunshots sounded, and the police finally stepped over the large metal net that prevented Green Goblin's flight from turning a bit, and Spider-Man escaped. It happened that a freighter passed by on the river and took the school bus. The children inside were all right. Spider-Man had no worries and fought with Green Goblin. The fighting between the two sides is getting farther and farther away from the bridge and gradually approaching the residential area. Gwen. Why are you here? Director George said with horror when he discovered that his daughter was on the scene. Only then did he discover that there was a young man standing beside Gwen. He had seen him during the last carnival. The point was that the two of them were still holding hands. They felt like their own cabbage was arched by a pig, and their expressions were displeased. Boy. Every time I see you, Gwen always has trouble. Gwen stopped doing it when he heard it. He took George and shook his arm, muttering, Dad, why do you say that? Director George, this can only mean that I have a relationship with Gwen. Shumo avoids the slightest, and now the two are in a relationship. Some words can be said, besides, they are the future father-in-law. You kid, clever teeth. George has an old face but nothing too heavy. This is the atmosphere in the United States. No one can intervene in the freedom of love. At most, parents are the guard. He observed that Shumo showed a calm posture in the two horror incidents. This is a rare mentality. Being the boss of a company, his economic strength is considered superior. George wasn't someone who didn't understand the truth. He could say anything if he was willing, but he just ran away like this with a little quilted jacket. George left for official duties without saying anything. The impact of this incident was very bad, which further shows that the supercriminals are simply not capable of being handled by the police. When the two were about to go shopping again, Gary did not keep up. Where is Giali? Gwen yelled anxiously when he noticed that the snack food sister was not by his side. Shumo patrolled around and found no trace. Unlike Gwen, he was worried about the safety of the food. He knew Giali's strength, and the criminals would not end up looking at her. Maybe I saw something delicious and ran to steal it without saying a word. Shumo comforted. It's okay. Let's look for it together. This little girl must be fascinated by the food. Just as the two looked back, Giali drooled while looking at the exquisite cakes in front of the cake shop. But what should I do if there is no money on him? Giali looked around, and there were a few non-mainstream youths standing in an alley, blinking eyes and walking over. Not long after, Giali walked back holding the sweet cake. At this moment, she saw someone in midair wearing a red Spider-Man and flung it to the next block. Giali remained unmoved, and continued to lick the cake on the cake. She didn't care about it, as long as she had something to eat. But the next moment, Giali's small eyes widened, and an incredible expression appeared. She actually saw a loli swinging silver silk and following Green Goblin. Even if there was a female Spider-Man, she would be expressionless, but this loli carrying tools was actually in the comics. Giali is with Shumo Tenten. She is the first to finish the Attack on Titan comic, so she knows everything well. Seeing the purple-haired loli getting farther and farther, Giali fell into deep thought and followed for a moment. There is no food and high energy to induce her, but the tools in Shumo's comics make Giali curious. Is Cuz still genuine? The famous detective Giali hadn't been excited to guess for a long time, and the girl she used was the same size as her, which seemed very fun. In an old dilapidated building, Spider-Man was slammed down, slammed through the glass skylight with a bang, fell into it, and the ground collapsed. Spider-Man stood up strongly before he could react. A pumpkin bomb was thrown in and fell to his side, the hot flame carrying a huge wave of air and inflating a powerful impact like a big hand. Spider-Man seemed to be hit by a high-speed train and blasted into his wall, crashing rubble rolling down on Spider-Man's body. Green Goblin, who was full of evil, walked up to Spider-Man. A sudden storm attack pressed Spider-Man to keep protecting his head, and his bruised body made Green Goblin laugh loudly. Ha ha ha, Spider-Man. Where's your fist, a good neighbor in New York? Where's your spider silk? The ferocious gaze in Green Goblin's faint eyes was beating, and he stepped on Spider-Man's head, tore off the mask on his head, and said with hideous hatred. Peter, you treachery bug. Harry has always regarded you as a friend and you have a secret relationship with his girlfriend. You really disappointed Harry, and I was disappointed too. With a buzz in his scarred brain, he looked up at Green Goblin's dark helmet and said in horror, Uncle Norman, are you Green Goblin? Harry often invites Peter to play at home. Naturally Peter and Norman know him. In his eyes, he should be an amiable uncle and a busy chairman of the Osborn Group. However, it is not these two identities that appear now, but super criminals who kill people without blinking and become devil. Faced with Norman's questioning, Peter was a little guilty, because it was true. In fact, Mary's attitude was ambiguous, and both Peter and Harry were played around. Green Goblin didn't care about this. The killing and anger in his heart were overwhelming. The rushing sound in his mind was like a magic sound, dominating him, took out 3 bombs from behind, stepped back a few steps, and grinned. Goodbye, Peter Parker, goodbye, Spider-Man. As soon as the words fell, the bomb was thrown over. Peter looked at the wickedly smiling death pumpkin, unable to move at all, closed his eyes and smiled bitterly. Is this a hero? Peter likes Saitama of One Punch Man, very much. He is free and powerful, which makes him very envious. Uncle Ben's death made him wake up from the comics. The comics are comics, just fantasy. He is not Saitama, and he does not have the power of a punch. Interest makes it impossible to be his heroic reason. The dilemma of life made him unable to breathe, and Peter knew that his heroic dream could only be greater ability and greater responsibility. So far, he has done it. Hearing that there will be slide-like memories before he will die, all he can think of is the finale of One Punch Man. Damn it, Shumo. Why do you draw so slowly? Remember to burn some for me. Before Peter Spider-Man died, only this thought was roaring. Just as Green Goblin gradually showed a triumphant grin, he heard a shoo in the dark, a white light flashed by, and the pumpkin bomb was suddenly bounced back by something. Green Goblin was secretly surprised. No, he couldn't bear 3 blasts so close, so he had to come and roll around with a donkey. Boom. The pumpkin that passed by Green Goblin fell on the ground and exploded directly, splashing fire and shining through the darkness of the building, reflecting a petite figure. Hey, you are Spider-Man, being a superhero is so fun. The girl with fake purple hair, black leather jacket and black windbreaker, her face covered by a black blindfold walked out of the shadow, with an innocent and mischievous smile on her face. Mindy looked at Peter and was slightly surprised. It was really fun that he thought he was a nerd or Spider-Man. Green Goblin narrowed his eyes and said vigilantly, Little girl, who are you? HMPH, I'm a superhero, a superkiller girl, the criminals will be caught with their hands. With a thought, Mindy gave herself a code name, groaning and laughing. Before going to school, she was regarded as a criminal by the police, and she did not expect to become a superhero in a blink of an eye. It was really exciting. Peter lying on the ground shouted, Run. Green Goblin was furious. A little girl wanted to be a superhero and didn't he put him in the eyes. An angry volcano erupted and kicked the badly injured Peter's head with all his strength. In intense pain, Peter, who was suffering from unreasonable calamity as soon as it darkened, he lost consciousness and fell into a coma. Boy, I want to die, I will fulfill you. Green Goblin stepped on the hang glider and threw the pumpkin bomb viciously, grinning. Without changing the color of Mindy's face, he pressed down the handle on the waist, and a pouch of iron wire was ejected from it and stuck on the sidewall. The gas tank on the scabbard exhaled air, driving the fan to rotate, and the small disc twisted to fix it. As soon as the cable curled up, the whole person directly panned abruptly, flashing past the pumpkin bomb. Little tricks. Green Goblin sneered, and controlled the hang glider to rush towards him, and the tip of the blade popped out, exuding a deep chill. Mindy then presses the control wrench on the handle to loosen the rope tip holder, adjusts the position and pops out the rope again, and the whole person can move at a high speed. As the gas exhaled, the fan buzzed, and under the impetus of the powerful gas, Mindy rose into the air and lay on the ceiling. Little trick, if you can catch me, it's ugly. Mindy said cheerfully and secretly. This three-dimensional mobile device is so easy to use, she wants to become the Mikasa in the real world. Mindy especially likes Mikasa, who is extremely smart and powerful. Mikasa's performance in the comics shows Mindy. She always thinks she is very similar to Mikasa, except for Alan, who has a waste material. After Mindy picked up the three-dimensional mobile device, in just a few days, she practiced with the training methods in the comics vividly. Today is the first time she uses this device to fight, which feels really good. Then when I thought about the purple fat time at the bottom of the trash bag and didn't know what was going on, Mindy became a little bit irritated and threw a dart from the side bag. What's the matter with this device, capable of ejecting so far? What is the core of this power? Green Goblin muttered to himself, controlling the flight to swing back and forth. The micro machine gun stretched out, and a dense metal storm poured out towards Mindy, who was walking on the wall. Bang bang bang. The big metal net was overwhelming, and the cold breath had been placed on Mindy's neck. He quickly adjusted the belt, and the belt that was wrapped around his body became tight. It was rolled over and made on the wall, and the metal storm fell behind him again and again. Mindy moved at high speed back and forth between the pillars, avoiding bombs and bullets again and again, while Green Goblin accidentally threw a hidden weapon at the bottom of the flight's machine. Even though Mindy's strength was not strong, the hidden weapon thrown made the flight's device slightly shaken. Damn it's kid. Green Goblin followed closely behind Mindy, his face becoming more ugly, and his ferocious roar resounded throughout the building. Just hitting Spider-Man on the ground, there is another girl who can fly and walk quickly. Ha ha ha, ugly. The anger lost Green Goblin's mind. He became anxious when he was crazy, and he began to get confused when he couldn't wait. Mindy, who was always paying attention to Green Goblin, suddenly lit up, flashing through the bomb by moving at high speed, but flashed to the side of Green Goblin in an instant. Huh. The cold light flashed, and the katana raised by Mindy was violently swung down, and with a clang, the katana splashed sparks on the Green Goblin helmet. All of Green Goblin's equipment is made of rare alloys. He originally wanted to sell it to the military, but he was taken away by Stark Industries. The armor is strong enough, but the cushioning effect is not good. The inertia brought by Minty's high-speed movement is amazing. The hang gliding wing fell directly, and Green Goblin flew upside down like a kite that dropped the line, and slammed into the wall with one head. Oh yeah. Mindy raised her hand in excitement and secretly said, "It's a pity that there is no audience around," and the applause on the scene did not sound, which made her a little depressed. Green Goblin peeled away the gravel from his body. His mind was messed up. His sharp voice laughed wildly. Gia ha ha, cough, ha ha. A stream of blood was coughed up, and the poor buffering capacity was the shortcoming of this equipment and the reason why it was eliminated by the military. Hey, why don't you surrender? Mindy looked at the ferocious Green Goblin and gave a sarcasm. The two knives in his hand flicked a sword flower, and the bright sharp edge made Green Goblin feel extra dazzling. Green Goblin used the tattered helmet to control the induction hang gliding wing. With a click, a small missile appeared from the base of the hang gliding wing. This is the newly developed individual artillery shell. The explosion range is 20 meters. The high temperature of the core can instantly turn this dangerous building into dust. Green Goblin deliberately equipped with a very powerful weapon after Shumo kicked back the pumpkin bomb last time. For this reason, he also unloaded a lot of bombs. He took off his helmet, revealing a pale and squalid face with bloodshot eyes, and roared at Mindy. You all want me to die, so let's die together. Green Goblin pressed the controller. The missile was ejected from the hang glider, and the strong initial velocity came to Mindy almost instantly. The two were too close, not 5 meters yet, and Mindy was too confident that Green Goblin had lost the ability to fight, and did not expect to have this move at all. As if time had been stopped, the missile dispelled the airwave and formed a cone shape, and Mindy's pupils in front of him shrank sharply. Peter is still in a coma. Green Goblin had a triumphant expression, his eyes exuding a cruel look. Just as Mindy regretted it and showed desperate eyes, a sweet voice came to the ears of the two present. The three-dimensional mobile device looks fun. At the same time, a purple sphere stood in front of Minty. Boom. A loud noise ran through the world. Impossible. Green Goblin, who was about to die together, was stunned, his eyes were flying out, and what appeared in front of him was the scorching fire that was absorbed by something. The burst that can completely destroy the building was completely sucked in by the origin that appeared in midair before reaching out, and it only made a deafening muffled thunder, like a dumb cannon. You are, Mindy tremblingly looked at Giali who appeared in front of her, horrified and dumbfounded. She could see clearly that a girl as big as her suddenly appeared in front of her, swallowing all the energy bursting out of the missile with a single wave. Call me Gary, where did you get this set of tools? Giali smiled and looked at the three-dimensional mobile device on Mindy's body. Dare to ignore me, wait for me, I will take revenge. Green Goblin was shocked by this now, and came to his senses. The hang glider was slowly drifting closer, preparing to escape. Call out. Garly controlled the origin to move quickly and hit Green Goblin's body, completely extinguished without even screaming. Minty witnessed all this. There was no explosion, just like that suddenly the whole person was gone. His feet trembled, and Mindy was in fear, and said timidly, I picked it up from a trash bag. It was really picked up. It's not a lie. Picked it up? Trash bag? Garly felt that something flashed by, but she didn't catch it. Golly. Why are you here? At this time Shumo and Gwen heard the roar nearby and rushed over. They saw Peter lying on the ground with metal bullets and hang-gliding wings scattered beside him. Giali was looking at the little girl who had met at the Frank building last time. No. I'm helping my friends fight bad guys together. Giali put a smile on her face, showing an innocent, simple and lovely smile. Do you think so? Mindy broke in a cold sweat and nodded wildly like a chicken. Yes. Yes, she and I are good friends. A desperate cry in my heart. I'm going to die. Oh, Gary, what is her name? Shumo sneered. Forehead. Faced with Shumo's sneer, Giali curled her lips. I just met today. After a pause, he pointed to Mindy and said, Shumo, didn't you find the tools on her body? She said they picked them up. Without Giali's reminder, Shumo has already discovered that this is a three-dimensional mobile device. After the device was pulled out at the time, Shumo thought it was useless for him. Lorna and Giali didn't need him. They could do this kind of high-speed movement between buildings or woods. Later, I put it in a garbage bag and threw it away. Shumo narrowed his eyes. Now that the three-dimensional mobile device is picked up, it is natural that the fat times will also be found. At this time Shumo couldn't say that this device belonged to him, otherwise the loli would miss her lips for a while, and Gwen is still here. Shumo coughed dryly and preached, maybe someone made it by himself, and threw it away when he found it was not used at all. Most ordinary people can't use this device, and the comics clearly state that it takes talent and hard work. Turning to Mindy and asked, what's your name? Mindy McCready. Mindy knew the man in front of him, the superpower, who annihilated everyone in the Frank mansion in one fell swoop, as if killing a man with a cruel method. The current situation is almost driving her crazy. It seems impossible to leave. This big and small really makes her have no resistance. At this time, Gwen suddenly discovered that Spider-Man's true face was Peter, and he was surprised. Shumo, Spider-Man is Peter, and he seems to be seriously injured. Would you like to call an ambulance? Peter was covered with scars that seemed a bit hanging by a thread. In fact, the wounds gradually healed under Superman's recovery, which was just horrifying. Shumo looked at the two girls. Their heights were almost the same. Why not let Giali have a companion, and said, since you are friends, get along more often. After speaking, I walked to Peter to look at some of the scars and dragged him up, and said, I will take off Peter's uniform first. You can go to the clinic to buy some trauma medicine. Leave here first. The three of them walked out of the dangerous building, and the two loli were following behind, looking at each other. Garly asked, is this fun? Mindy responded cautiously, it's okay. Although it didn't seem dangerous, she had never put down her vigilance after seeing Golly's power. Giali was stunned, and suddenly said, let's be friends. She saw that Shumo had friends of her own. Why didn't she? Mindy in front of her seemed to be a good candidate. She also wants a small partner. Didn't I say before? What I want is a true friend. Giali stretched out her small tender hand and spread her 5 fingers. My name is Giali, how about you? Me, my name is Mindy. Mindy put her hands up and shook them together. She didn't know why. She might also want a partner, or it might be for other reasons. In short, the two became friends in a daze. Not long after Shumo and others left, a group of people in black rushed to the scene, and it was Collison who took the lead. Sir, according to the site cleaning, at least 5 people are here, and neither Spider-Man nor Green Goblin are located. An agent came to report the situation. put the helmet and face mask into the experiment bag, and took it back to test the DNA on it afterwards. There are also Green Goblin's helmet and Spider-Man's destroyed mask. Coulson asked thornily, "Are there any probes?" Many of this area are dilapidated buildings and old houses without probes. The most recent one was on the street and the visible line did not scan this area. Cleaning the scene and reporting to the director is another case that cannot be ascertained. It's not that the identity information can be found by getting the DNA. The sample size is too small and the information database is missing. Even S.H.I.E.L.D. has nothing to do. Coulson came hurriedly and returned with disappointment. Next day, "Good morning, Lorna." Shumo came downstairs when he saw Lorna coming in with the lunchbox and greeted her. Lorna put down the lunchbox and heard the words, showing a charming smile, "Good morning, Shumo." Looking around thoughtfully, he asked in doubt, "Giali, haven't you gotten up yet?" Lorna lives here comfortably these days. There is no life like being chased by the police everywhere. Shumo and Giali are actually good people. Besides, they can draw such good cartoons. How could they be bad people? Shumo, who was issued a good person card without knowing it, was sleepy and sullen, and said, "This dead girl only came back in the middle of the night last night and went out to play with friends." Last night Shumo applied some trauma medicine to Peter and put it directly on the roof of Aunt May's house, waiting for him to wake up by himself. After Gwen experienced the story of Green Goblin and Spider-Man as classmates, he was not in the mood to go shopping anymore, so he decided to take a taxi back at the next date. Then Giali happily and Mindy didn't know where to go to the wild. Shumo only knew that Giali had come back in the middle of the night. It would be great if Giali had friends. Lorna is happy from the bottom of her heart, because Giali usually doesn't have her own little friends around Shumo, and she looks like a stranger to others. Thinking of a place to stay, a high-paying job, and a comfortable place to live are all down to what Giali said. Even though there was some unpleasantness in the middle, luckily Lorna and the two became friends. Yes. Shumo has some feelings. It would be a good thing for Giali to have a partner. It would be boring to watch the children's animation channel at home every day, and there is no ecstatic bear. "HMPH, are you talking ill of me?" Giali said with a certainty, piercing a small head from the crack in the door of the slumber. Shumo heard this and walked to the bathroom with Giali in one hand and threw it in. "Go and wash your face." When Giali picked up the breakfast Shumo bought, she saw that they had already drawn the sketches in the study, and she had to lie down on the sofa and watch TV reports. Welcome to the American Morning News. Here are the latest news in recent days. Norman Osborn, chairman of the Osborn Group, has been missing recently. Many people think of Stark Industries. There is no news from either of them. Last night, there was a terrorist attack on the Brook Bridge. The supercriminal Green Goblin fought with Spider-Man who came to rescue. The result is unknown. But this morning, witnesses saw Spider-Man still active in New York. The military dispatched large-scale personnel with advanced weapons and equipment and exploded in the desert. The purpose is unknown. 5 astronauts started boarding the airship this afternoon, approaching the universe storm to obtain a large amount of data, to crack the secrets of human genetic inheritance, and use it to benefit the entire mankind. I wish them guy back soon. The news that the host reported one after another made Giali lack of interest, and she was boring after watching it on the children's animation channel for a few moments. Giali is completely nourished by Shumo's taste, and can't be seen at all by ordinary manga and animation. Giali quietly walked to Shumo's side with her feet and poked her head out to observe, listening to the sound of pen-paper contact. This is a new manga, and the protagonist seems to be called Kurosaki, carrying a big kitchen knife on his back, so funny. Giali raised her brows and chuckled secretly. "Why don't you go and play with Mindy?" Shumo asked indifferently without turning his head back. Shumo knew that Giali was only curious and watched a few times, but she wouldn't be impatient and stare all the way through the painting process. When Giali heard the words, her face was pulled, her mouth was pouting, and her head fell dejected. "Mindy has gone to school. I made an appointment with her not to disturb her when she goes to school. Mindy is usually naughty, and school is also very noisy. Damming sent her in because she wanted to do a personal job in the future, so she still has to learn." Giali had no choice but to express her understanding. Who would call them good friends? "Going to school? Or I will send you to school too, with Mindy." Shumo had a flash of inspiration when he heard the words, put down his paintbrush and turned his head and said to Giali, "So you won't disturb her." He felt that it was not a problem for Giali to stay on the sofa all day long. "Okay. I'm going to call Mindy, I'm going to see her at school." Giali became excited, and the school seemed to be fun. At this time, Lorna also put down the paintbrush, and suddenly interjected. It seems that the school does not allow eating in class. Can you hold it back for so long, Giali?" After spending so many days with each other, Gale eats all the time during the day. In Lorna's view, this should be a negative effect of superpower or simply supplementing the ability to increase physical strength. What? When Giali heard this, she covered her mouth with her hand and stared at the boss. She couldn't believe that there was still no place to eat in the world. To her, it is hell. No, the Lord of Hell is not as strong as her father. It should be said that life is worse than death. Shumo nodded and said, yes, you can't go to school anymore. Woo. Giali whimpered a little, but she was so uncomfortable that she couldn't go because it was so fun. She went back to the sofa and sulked herself into eating and drinking. Shumo and Lorna looked at each other, shook their heads, and continued to draw the gourd, but it didn't take long for Giali to pan in slowly. Giali. What's wrong? Hey, Shumo, tell you something. Shumo asked. What? I want to paint. Shumo touched his head and stroked Giali's forehead, and said depressed. I don't have a fever. Why don't I have a clue? Puff haha. Lorna, who was next to her, burst into laughter. It was fun to live with these two people. Giali exploded, her purple hair stood up. Shumo. Wait. You can't stand it just by looking at my painting. Isn't painting a joke? Shumo frustrated and went back, telling the truth. I want to draw comics. It's so boring. I will paint. Giali lay directly on the floor and rolled around with grievances. Get up. You didn't touch the floor at all, just hanging in the air, without any sincerity. Shumo had a dark face and unceremoniously exposed this peepily. You promised. What do you say? What's the picture? Asked Giali in surprise. Draw a cat. A Doraemon.